We okay, Jim? You ready?
I am.
Okay. The subcommittee will come to order. The chair recognizes himself for an opening statement. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's legislative hearing on proposals that represent the bread and butter of our jurisdiction on the safety and consumer products and services our constituents rely on. I want to thank all the bill sponsors with legislation on our agenda today, and we got quite a few. I appreciate all of their work aimed to help save lives and protect consumers from dangerous products, provide transparency regarding event tickets and lodging accommodations, disclose important information to consumers related to product claims, and raise awareness about the information and tools needed to get their vehicles repaired. I'm particularly excited to be moving forward with the Ticket Act, a bill that I've sponsored along with my colleague and friend, Ranking Member Schakowsky, that will bring upfront price transparency to consumers as it relates to event tickets. Live event tickets have long been plagued by hidden fees at the end of the checkout transaction, but I'm glad that the industry has recognized the need to change the process to bring ticket price transparency to the market. In the other chamber, in the Senate Commerce Committee, bipartisan companion legislation sponsored by my friends, Senator Cruz, and the chair, Senator Cantwell, has moved out of committee. We're going to get this done. I'm certainly mindful of a broader discussion, though, on other consumer harms to address, which is why we have included a discussion draft on the docket today that addresses the issue of speculative ticketing. I look forward to diving into these proposals further and to continuing my partnership with Ranking Member Schakowsky on this particular initiative. A few additional bills that I want to give a special acknowledgement to is Representative Wasserman Schultz and Dr. Burgess's pool safety reauthorization, Dr. Bouchon's draft on cleaning product labeling, and Representative Curtis's Reinforcing American-Made Products Act. Representative Wasserman Schultz and Dr. Burgess's Virginia Graham-Baker Pool and Spa Safety Reauthorization Act will provide state and local governments with assistance for education, training, and enforcement of pool safety requirements. This program, which is named in memory of Virginia, who drowned while entrapped by a hot tub drain in 2002 and was enacted into law in 2008, has been well administered by CPSC. I look forward to reauthorizing this program again. I'm also pleased we will be able to discuss Representative Bouchon's proposal on ingredient labeling for cleaning products. This draft will ensure that we have one consistent and clear standard on cleaning product ingredient labels throughout the country. Consumers should know exactly what to expect when they purchase their favorite disinfectant, scrubbing spray, or other supplies needed to clean their homes. That shouldn't change if they cross state lines. We also cannot overlook Representative Curtis's bill, H.R. 5556, the Reinforcing American-Made Products Act, which will ensure that we have one national standard for Made in America labels on American products. This common-sense measure provides certainty for businesses, manufacturers, and consumers alike to ultimately ensure we keep our incentives to companies to make their products here at home. I know this has historically been a bipartisan initiative, and I'm very hopeful it will remain that way, so as we go forward. As anyone who remembers the old Schoolhouse Rock video, and I do remember it, just a bill, right? On how a bill becomes law, there are a lot that don't ultimately make it to the finish line. So, yeah, I'm old enough to remember that one. So, again, some of these proposals are surely ready for prime time, while others are not. But this hearing represents an important step to review these bills, find areas for improvement and consensus, and move forward through the regular order. I look forward to the discussion. And again, thank you to our panelists for their testimony, which will begin soon. And I'll yield back the balance of my time if I have any left. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, my friend Ms. Schakowsky, for her 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And today I join my colleagues in a bipartisan issues, mostly working together, and I really appreciate that, and working with my chairman. 5 of the bills that we're going to be talking about today deal with product safety, from pools to batteries, a wide variety, and several of them are about this issue of junk fees. And we know that consumers are so frustrated right now because they see that. And I'm so proud to co-sponsor, along with the chairman, our legislation, the Ticket Act, that will really, I think, make it much more comfortable and fair for consumers. Right now, I actually have a constituent who said that her daughter's, she was having what do we call it, her dance recital, and she was getting tickets for it, and by the end of the contract to get the tickets, she had to pay 20% more in a hidden fee. But 20% is at the low end of some of these junk fees. It can go up to even 60% that you find out at the end. So our Ticket Act, I think, will absolutely make it more possible for our constituents. And as the chairman said, we are also going to be looking at the issue of what we call speculative ticketing, which is that sometimes the people who are selling the tickets really don't even have the tickets, and we have to deal with that. So I'm going to continue to work with all parties to make sure that we can address this issue. Today we're also going to deal with the issue of, let's see, what was the next one? Right to repair. What? Right to repair. Okay, also the right to repair. So I have also heard a lot from the people who in our communities repair cars, and their right to be able to get the information that they need to be able to do those repairs, and not to have restrictions on who actually has the information that is needed in order to do the repairs. So this issue is really, really important, I think, for many people, for car owners, and we may want to, we want to make sure that if you're able to fix the car, that you should have the qualifications to do that. You should be able to. You should be able to do that. So that is another piece of legislation, the right to repair, and I'm very much supportive of that. So I just want everybody to note, here we are in the Energy and Commerce Committee, on this subcommittee. I was the chair last time. Gus Bilirakis was the ranking member. Now he's the chair. I'm the ranking member, and we're getting things done. We work together. And it's ironic to me that we are standing in a moment where we may be on the verge of a collapse of government, that we're going to see a shutdown. And one of the things that we are seeing from many of the Republicans is the idea that we should not have the funding that many of these agencies need in order to protect consumers in every way. So I am just hoping that we can get to a point where all of us can agree on the kinds of things that we're talking about today in this subcommittee, and work with the same collegial manner that we have done for such a long time. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. And I tell you what, we are getting things done here in the Energy and Commerce Committee, and we have great leaders here, Mrs. Rogers and of course, Mr. Pallone, the full committee chairs. So I'm proud of the work, and we'll just keep moving forward. Now I'd like to recognize Mrs. Rogers for her 5 minutes for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our witnesses who are advocating for people that we depend on every day, from those fixing our cars to protecting us from fraud to ensuring the products and services we use are what they claim to be. This hearing also serves as an appropriate follow-up to last week's legislative hearing on the supply chain management issues. We know that losing control of our supply chains can limit the availability of critical goods, harm production quality, and weaken the security and integrity of products and services being sold to American families and businesses. This subcommittee is leading to ensure people aren't getting ripped off, and even more importantly, that families and communities are safe. My colleague and the ranking member of the subcommittee, Jan Schierkowski, has been a tremendous leader for us on all of these product safety topics, and working with her as ranking member was a pleasure, and I appreciate her continued efforts now with Subcommittee Chair Gus Bilirakis on all of these issues. We have an ambitious docket today. Much of the work still lies ahead of us on these bills. I do hope that we can build bipartisan consensus and stakeholder support as we move forward. This committee, as has been mentioned, has a rich history of coming together on behalf of those that we serve. And many of these bills address issues that we've all heard about directly from people in our communities to make products safer. Rep. David Valadio's proposal would combat romance scams by going after con artists who prey on lonely people, particularly adults over 60 who were scammed for nearly $140 million in 2020 alone. Representative Young Kim's proposal will help travelers distinguish the good actors from the bad in the lodging industry by ensuring that they know the full price of accommodations, including things like resort fees up front. And a bill by Reps. Richie Torres, Andrew Garabino, and Yvette Clark would ensure that rechargeable batteries used to power products like e-scooters don't explode because of their inferior quality. This is the people's house, and as the representatives of the people, it is our responsibility to ensure their concerns are being addressed. It's part of why I do remain concerned about agencies like the FTC, that I see losing sight of their mission of consumer protection and fighting fraud scams. Surely we can all agree the FTC should not be diverting resources to force a political agenda on job creators and family businesses. Should not be abusing its power to threaten small businesses with fines for actions they haven't done. It shouldn't be initiating rulemaking proceedings that go far beyond the scope authorized by Congress, or weaponizing an extreme green agenda in order to ban affordable cars and home appliances that people rely on every day. Sadly, all of these have been on display, and many of the actions can be attributed to a lack of accountability. I was pleased to see Republican nominees for the FTC and Consumer Product Safety Commission finally considered by the Senate Commerce Committee last week. These nominees are needed to move to the Senate floor and be confirmed expeditiously in order to start returning the agencies to core missions. Until bipartisan input is restored, these agencies' credibility and integrity will continue to be eroded. I hope to see fully bipartisan and operational FTC and CPSC soon in both people and practice, where input is welcomed by both sides, extremes are rejected, and the law is implemented as mandated by Congress. Thanks again to all the members on both sides of the aisle, often on this committee, for your work on these bills. I look forward to the witness testimony, and I yield back.
I thank the chair, and now I'll recognize my friend from New Jersey, the ranking member of the full committee, for 5 minutes for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Bilirakis. This hearing is an acknowledgement of what countless Americans across the country already know. Threats to consumers and commerce are pervasive and on the rise. Consumer product-related injuries rose by nearly 8% in 2022, totaling over 12.5 million injuries. The Consumer Product Safety Commission responded that year by increasing product recalls by 33%. Nevertheless, approximately 50,000 deaths associated with consumer products occur every year. In 2022, the Federal Trade Commission received over 5 million reports of fraud, identity theft, and other scams, a nearly twofold increase from pre-pandemic levels. Senior citizens, veterans, small businesses, and everyday consumers reported nearly $8.8 billion of losses to fraud. That's a $2.6 billion increase over 2021 levels. So we have a duty to protect the public from hazardous and defective products, to combat unfair and deceptive acts and practices, and create a level playing field for American businesses, entrepreneurs, and innovators. That's why Congress has empowered the FTC to protect Americans against scam artists, privacy thieves, unlawful robocallers, and others who target consumers and small businesses. And it's why we've charged the CPSC with protecting the public from unsafe consumer products, paying special attention to protecting infants and children from products that cause injury or death. It's also why we've commissioned the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, to improve fuel efficiency and save lives on our nation's roads. And it's why today this subcommittee is continuing its long tradition of focusing on legislation to strengthen consumer protections. And I'm particularly pleased that we are considering the Boston Swift Act, legislation that I introduced with Representative Pascrell. Consumers deserve to enjoy their favorite artists and other live entertainment without breaking the bank. This bill will restore fairness and transparency to the live events ticket marketplace. It will ensure that the true ticket price is clearly displayed, preserve ticket transferability, and clamp down on unauthorized speculative ticket sales. Now, as we discuss all of these bills today, we should be mindful that we're asking these already small agencies to do more at a time when House Republicans are demanding drastic cuts to each of them. House Republicans have proposed slashing the FTC's budget by $53 million, a 12.5% cut from last year's funding levels. The FTC has 40% fewer full-time staff than it did 40 years ago. These budget cuts would jeopardize the FTC's ability to protect consumer and competition while benefiting big tech, unlawful robocallers, and all varieties of scam artists. And House Republicans want to cut the CPSC's budget by 9%, which would cripple the agency's ability to address dangerous and defective consumer products and establish life-saving safety standards. Children's safety would be put at risk, and unscrupulous actors would win. And even worse, House Republicans continue to cave to the extreme elements in their party who want to shut down the government if they don't get their way. We are 4 days away from government funding running out, and extreme House Republicans are making radical demands, fighting with each other, and driving our nation into a reckless shutdown that will hurt families, damage our economy, and threaten our safety. I just have to reiterate that these draconian spending cuts and government shutdowns will not protect consumers, promote competition, or strengthen American competitiveness. And so again, I urge my colleagues to abandon this dangerous strategy. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Our first witness is Mr. Stephen Michael Gentine, Counsel at Arnold and Porter. So, sir, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Bilirakis and Ranking Member Schakowsky and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you again today. I am an attorney at Arnold and Porter. My practice focuses largely on matters to do with consumer product and motor vehicle safety, including practice before the CPSC. But I should note my testimony today is in my personal capacity, may not represent the opinions of Arnold and Porter or any clients. The 5 CPSC-related topics before you today all touch on critical areas of CPSC policy, and the stakeholder community appreciates the subcommittee's continued engagement and leadership on these vital issues. I'd like to take this opportunity to focus on 2 of these bills, the Consumer Safety Technology Act and the Virginia Graham-Baker Pool and Spa Safety Reauthorization Act. CPSC is one of the best bargains in federal government, with a fiscal year 2023 budget of just over $150 million and just 569 FTEs. The agency oversees the safety of thousands of categories of consumer products, ranging from strollers to ATVs, from cribs to adult portable bed rails. The agency's core mission is to protect American consumers from unreasonable risks of injury associated with products across that sweeping jurisdiction. However, its mission also includes assisting consumers in evaluating the comparative safety of products, developing uniform safety standards, and promoting research and investigation. That's an awful lot of crucial work across an awfully big space, and more so for a relatively small agency. Identifying opportunities to maximize the efforts of CPSC's talented, dedicated staff of public servants is essential to each of these missions, and the Consumer Safety Technology Act is well poised to help CPSC do just that. CPSC was created in 1972, and many of its core information gathering tools have been serving the agency for much of that time, and serving well. However, CPSC is developing new tools to gather and analyze the breadth and depth of data that are available in the modern digital economy is essential to helping CPSC to adapt to a consumer product marketplace that is almost unrecognizably different than the market that existed 50 years ago. In recent years, CPSC has taken important steps in this direction. Under the leadership of Commissioner Feldman and others, CPSC has added crucial staff leadership roles, such as a chief data analyst, data analytics officer, and a chief technologist. Bringing these skill sets to the service of consumer safety was a significant step toward tomorrow's CPSC. The pilot program envisioned in the Consumer Safety Technology Act would be another such step. Title I of the Act directs CPSC to conduct a pilot program to evaluate the use of artificial intelligence in one or more areas of CPSC activity. Developing additional sophisticated automated tools to assist CPSC staff in gathering and analyzing information would be invaluable, allowing the agency to direct more of its resources toward acting on that information. For example, one of the CPSC's current data tools, the Retailer Reporting Program, was created as its own pilot program in 2004. Participants in that program provide regular, generally weekly updates of consumer reports that use any of a variety of safety-related keywords. For an agency whose key data sources frequently suffer substantial lag time, the near real-time stream of data from the Retailer Reporting Program stands apart. In addition, its keyword-based reporting criteria may help CPSA identify trends among reported incidents that individually might not otherwise come to the agency's attention. However, in recent years, the Retailer Reporting Program has languished in large part because sifting the mountain of data the program generates has been a largely manual process. Developing and implementing modern AI technologies to help narrow the program's data stream could be helpful to CPSC staff to help them better operationalize the real-time information the program provides. The VGBA. First enacted nearly 2 decades ago, the VGBA sought not only to address tragic incidents related to pool drains, but also to reduce drowning and near-drowning incidents in public and residential pools. As part of its pursuit of this worthy goal, the VGBA enacted a grant program whereby states that had or enacted laws requiring certain safety features in and around pools could receive federal funds to hire personnel to enforce these laws, as well as to conduct educational campaigns to reduce drowning risks. That grant program was later expanded to include local and tribal governments. Despite this historic effort, including the awarding of millions of dollars in grants and the creation of CPSC's Pool Safely campaign, drowning remains the leading cause of death among children ages 1 to 4, and even more troubling, 2020 saw a 10% increase in such fatal drownings. The reauthorization before this subcommittee not only continues but builds upon the work the VGBA has done over the last 2 decades. Most notably, the reauthorization adds qualified nonprofit organizations to the list of eligible entities. While state, local, and tribal governments are essential partners in drowning prevention, expanding the universe of potential grant recipients to include nonprofits with proven experience in this space will bring new and skilled allies to bear. And on a personal note, I just wanted to note that, Mr. Chairman, I was a journalist in Tallahassee when both you and Ms. Wasserman-Schultz were in the Florida House. I admired you both then and continue to do so for your spirit of service, and it's wonderful to see the Florida delegation's continued leadership on these vital public safety issues. I appreciate the opportunity to address the subcommittee and look forward to any questions.
And I remember we actually passed the pool safety bill, and I was one of the few on my side of the aisle that supported it. You remember that, don't you? Okay. Our witness, the next witness is Mr. John Breyault, Vice President of Public Policy, Telecommunications, and Fraud at the National Consumers League. You're recognized for 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Bilirakis, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee. My name is John Breyault, and I am the Vice President of Public Policy, Telecommunications, and Fraud at the National Consumers League. Founded in 1899, NCL is the nation's oldest consumer advocacy organization. For more than 124 years, our nonprofit mission has been to promote social and economic justice for consumers and workers in the United States and abroad. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the millions of consumers that NCL represents in support of legislation promoting transparency, fairness, and safety in the marketplace. In November 2022, tens of millions of fans went online at once to try and purchase tickets to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. The demands placed by the megastar's legions of fans, as well as armies of ticket brokers, overwhelmed Ticketmaster's systems. 2 million tickets were reportedly sold in a single day, but millions of her fans were left without tickets, driving prices into the ether on secondary ticket markets. Outraged Swifties took to the internet, filed lawsuits, and demonstrated on Capitol Hill. Congress responded, calling Ticketmaster before the Senate Judiciary Committee to answer for the implosion of their supposedly sophisticated ticketing systems. And while the Taylor Swift meltdown may have been an anomaly, it exposed the ugly underbelly of a live event industry that is rigged to maximize profits of a select few at the expense of the frustration of millions of fans. 3 bills before the subcommittee today seek to reform that industry, an industry that lacks checks and balances and advantages ticketing companies at the expense of average customers. Each of these bills has NCL's support. First, the Boss and Swift Act of 2023, sponsored by Representatives Pascrell, Pallone, Brownlee, and Delegate Holmes-Norton, is the single most pro-fan and pro-competition ticketing legislation currently before Congress. This comprehensive reform bill will let consumers see total ticket prices up front instead of having to click through multiple screens and provide personal information just to find out what a ticket will actually cost. This bill also requires better disclosure of important information like ticket refund policies, sheds daylight on ticket holdbacks that siphon tickets to a privileged few at the expense of average fans, and helps protect consumers from Ticketmaster's anti-competitive efforts to extend its monopoly into the secondary ticket market. Though less ambitious in its scope than the Boss and Swift Act, NCL also supports H.R. 3950, the Ticket Act, which has been sponsored by you, Chairman Bilirakis, and Ranking Member Schakowsky. The Ticket Act addresses one of fans' biggest pain points when it comes to ticketing, the out-of-control fees that add an average of 27 to 31% to the cost of the ticket on primary and secondary markets, respectively. Like the Boss and Swift Act, the bill would mandate all-in pricing, allowing fans to more easily compare the prices of live event tickets, including fees, without having to go through lengthy checkout processes that are designed to make comparison pricing more difficult. The bill would also crack down on the controversial and often deceptive practice known as speculative ticketing by requiring ticket sellers to disclose clearly and conspicuously that they do not have tickets in hand when speculative sales occur. Finally, we support the goal of the speculative ticketing ban discussion draft, which would go a step further than the Boss and Swift Act and the Ticket Act by banning speculative ticket sales outright, while carving out buying services that are designated separately from traditional ticket resale listings. In addition to these 3 ticketing bills, NCL supports Representative Kim's No Hidden Fees on Extra Expenses for Stays Act, which would mandate all-in pricing in the hotel and short-term lodging industries. We are also pleased to support Representative McLean's and Peltola's bipartisan and bicameral WIPPES Act, which would require do-not-flush labels on cleaning wipes, potentially saving consumers from incurring hundreds or even thousands of dollars in unexpected plumbing repair bills. Finally, we applaud Representative Valdeo for introducing the Online Dating Safety Act of 2023. Consumers reported losing $8.8 billion to fraud in 2022, an increase of nearly $2.6 billion over 2021. Romance scams are particularly costly for the victims, with median losses of $4,400 last year. And that's just the financial cost. The emotional toll on romance scam victims we hear from every day at NCL, and let me tell you, it is heartbreaking to hear their stories. Representative Valadeo's bill would better protect users of online dating services by requiring dating websites to proactively notify users when an account is banned for fraudulent activity. In closing, I would like to again thank you, Chairman Bilirakis and Ranking Member Schakowsky, for the invitation to testify on these important consumer protection issues. I look forward to answering your questions.
This is Mr. David Touhey, principal at Connett Consulting. And I tell you what, these issues are really, that's why we're here, because these particular issues impact people directly. So I really appreciate all your testimony. But, sir, Mr. Touhey, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Bilirakis, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify about legislative proposals to address ticket abuses in the live event industry on behalf of the International Association of Venue Managers. Representing public assembly venues, IAVM's 7,200-plus active members include managers and senior executives from auditoriums, arenas, convention centers, exhibit halls, stadiums, performing arts centers, university complexes, amphitheaters, and fairgrounds. IAVM's venues are the face and the place fans associate with an event. We field their calls of concern and do our best to resolve their issues, many of which you will hear are out of our control. IAVM is a member of the Fix the Ticks Coalition, working with our colleagues in the music, sports, and other live event industries to stop abuses in ticket sales that harm consumers, frustrate fans, and artificially inflate the price of admission to live events. Members of the Fix the Ticks Coalition make shows happen. We are on the front line, and our #1 goal is to ensure that fans have a memorable experience at every live event. We applaud you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Schakowsky, for recognizing that problems exist in ticketing and your work to fix them, especially with the bills you are considering today. The Ticket Act, the Boston-Swift Act, and the speculative ticketing draft collectively contain provisions that would strike at the most pressing of the current problems in the ticket market, but not one bill goes far enough. I started in the venue management industry 30 years ago, and throughout my career, there have been huge changes in the ticket business. Today, most tickets are purchased online. Ticket scalping is fueled by computer programs, including bots. Indeed, this process has given rise to a now called secondary ticket market that preys on consumers desperate to see their favorite artists or teams. Due to deceptive websites, paid sponsor links, and search engine optimization, buyers often don't even realize they are not on the website of the actual venue or artist. Nor are they aware that tickets may still be available from the primary seller on the official website at a lower face value price, or that they may be buying a ticket that the reseller doesn't even possess, called speculative tickets. Let me be clear, speculative tickets are fake tickets and should be considered fraud. The two main problems consumers face today when attempting to purchase tickets are high resale prices and scarcity of availability. Speculative or fake tickets and deceptive reseller websites contribute to the inflated costs and lack of inventory. As I prepared this testimony, I did an internet search for tickets at the Capital One Arena here in Washington, D.C., a venue that I managed. When I clicked on the first selection that appeared, I was taken to a website that uses the image of Capital One Arena and makes itself appear to be associated with the venue, which it is not. An average fan trying to quickly score tickets might assume that they had landed on the web page for the arena and think they were purchasing tickets directly from the venue. I found a listing for 2 tickets to Wu-Tang Clan, who played at the arena last night, in Section 2, Row P, for $1,503 all in, but with no seat location. That's always an indication it's not an official sales site, and often a sign that tickets are speculative, meaning the reseller doesn't have possession of the tickets. At the same time, on the venue's actual site, 2 seats in Section 2, Row P, seats 15 and 16, were listed for an all-in cost of $637.40. The large reseller markup of $865.60 between the 2 sites is not uncommon and is what fuels the use of deceptive websites and speculative tickets. Only the ticket reseller benefits from this large markup. No one associated with the event does. Not the artist, not the venue, not the promoter. The Ticket Act, the Boss and Swift Act, and the speculative ticketing draft collectively contain provisions that begin to fix these problems, but they all need further consideration. In fact, the disclosure requirements for primary ticket sellers in the Boss and Swift Act could have unintended consequences of making it easier for ticket brokers to drive up costs and inject more fake and speculative tickets in the market. The all-in pricing disclosure in the Ticket Act is a good first step, but it needs to go farther and ban speculative tickets as well. The provision to prevent deceptive URLs in the Boss and Swift Act is a great start, but it must be strengthened. Speculative tickets and deceptive URLs must be properly addressed in any legislation. There are additional policy changes the Fix the Ticks Coalition recommends, and I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss them. Please know that IAVM and the Fix the Ticks Coalition stand ready to work with you to find common sense solutions to cure problems in the ticket industry and provide a safer, more positive consumer experience. Our members are committed at all levels to ensuring fans have a great experience from the moment they begin the process to purchase tickets until they leave our doors after an event. On behalf of IAVM and its 7,200 members, thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Our next witness is Mr. Scott Benavidez. I hope I pronounced that right. Chairman of the Automotive Service Association. You're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Bilirakis, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Scott Benavidez, and I am here today on behalf of the Automotive Service Association. ASA has been a steadfast advocate for right to repair principles, the right of car owners and independent repair shops to access vehicle service information needed to diagnose and repair vehicles for decades. In the fall of 2002, after a Senate Commerce Committee hearing on right to repair, ASA signed an agreement with automakers stipulating that independent automotive repair shops would have access to the same emissions and non-emission service information provided to the manufacturer's franchise dealerships. Emissions and non-emission service information access for independent shops works today through automaker websites and third-party information providers. Since 2002, the vehicles Americans rely on have become increasingly sophisticated, and we know that rate of innovation will only accelerate. The way vehicle issues are diagnosed and repaired evolves in tandem with technological advancements. Although today automotive repairers have access to vehicle data necessary for repairs, our industry has been concerned about the path forward for obtaining data for vehicles moving into the marketplace. Newer vehicle technologies with an increasing number of sensors will present challenges to our shops without access to repair data. That is why in July of this year, ASA proudly announced that it had reached a landmark agreement with automakers that ensures independent repair shops can diagnose and repair their customers' vehicles without hindrance from telematics nor any other innovation. We want to express our appreciation to U.S. Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia and Darren Soto of Florida for their efforts to bring stakeholders together through the Bipartisan Vehicle Data Access Caucus. Their efforts encourage repair shops and automakers to work together to determine a path forward on issues of vehicle data access. The agreement ensures independent repair shops shall continue to have access to the same diagnostic and repair information that auto manufacturers make available to authorized dealer networks. This includes telematic data needed to diagnose and repair vehicles if not otherwise available, and all vehicle technologies and powertrains, including gasoline, diesel, fuel cell, electric battery, hybrid, and plug-in hybrid electric powertrains. Important for our industry, the agreement contains an education and training component. Our agreement encourages collaboration with auto manufacturers on training. We have co-sponsored education and training opportunities in the past and will continue in the future thanks to the 2023 agreement. The agreement acknowledges the importance of assuring we have the same sources for data in the future that we do today, directly through automakers' repair sites, shared access points like OEM One-Stop, and via third-party information providers, softwares, and tools. With the volume of data and thousands of independent shops and technicians, how will gaps in policy issues be addressed? The agreement establishes a vehicle data access panel to identify issues a party may have with respect to access as pledged in the agreement. Our 2023 agreement also establishes a data access working group to consider any technological advances that may alter the vehicle repair marketplace. Most importantly, the agreement safeguards a competitive repair market that yields the fairest prices for drivers and the highest quality safety outcomes. We believe the agreement ASA reached with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation and SCRS nullifies the need for the Repair Act. In a 2002 hearing, members of the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee challenged the aftermarket and automobile manufacturers to try to work out their differences in the right to repair issue, or the committee would pursue legislation. At the Commerce hearing, ASA had testified in support of right to repair legislation. Following the hearing, we held a series of meetings with the automakers and established the 2002 Service Information Agreement. For more sophisticated technologies as of July 2023, we are pleased to now have an agreement in place to address independent shops' needs for service and repair data. We hope that Congress will again allow and encourage the industry solution to a very complex issue. Thank you again, Chairman Bilirakis and Member Schakowsky, for convening this important hearing and allowing me to share the perspective of ASA and repair shops. I look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you, sir. Our final witness is Ms. Kathleen Callahan, owner of Xpertech Auto Repair. You're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Bilirakis, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Kathleen Callahan, and I am owner of Xpertech Auto Repair in Englewood, Florida. I'm a member of the Auto Care Association, the national trade association that represents the independent aftermarket and over 200,000 repair shops. I'm also the incoming vice chair of Women in Auto Care, another national organization dedicated to engaging, educating, and empowering women in the auto care industry. Thank you for allowing me to be here today to discuss H.R. 906, the Repair Act. Xpertech is a woman-owned business with 8 employees delivering professional repair and maintenance on multiple vehicle makes and models. As a gold-certified Napa Auto Care Center, we provide our clients with a 3-year national parts and labor warranty while maintaining the personal touch of a family-owned local business. The independent aftermarket is nearly a $4 billion industry with over 4 million employees. In addition to shops like mine, there are manufacturers of parts, accessories, tools, and supplies, as well as names you see everywhere, like Napa, O'Reilly, AutoZone, and Advanced Auto Parts. When you hear someone say, "My car needs some work," the response is usually, "Don't worry, I got a guy or a gal." Most often, they're talking about us. My industry is an economic engine for the nation and essential to keeping America's 292 million registered motor vehicles on the road. I am here today because my shop and every other independent repair shop in the country faces an existential threat to our future. As technology advances, terabytes of data are being transmitted wirelessly from your vehicle to the servers of original equipment manufacturers, OEMs. This wireless transmission process is called telematics. Did you know that your car knows exactly how much you weigh to the ounce? So does the manufacturer. You may remember a time when your trusted independent technician would plug a tool in under the dashboard to analyze the data needed to diagnose and eventually repair your vehicle. The data was accessible through the onboard diagnostic port, OBD. Those days will soon be far behind us as the data I need to diagnose the complex computer network of modern vehicles is inaccessible through our scan tools, and we must send our clients to a dealership for answers and often a much higher repair bill. The OEMs have complete control of this data and decide who can access it and how. In the OEM's view of the world, franchise dealerships will have access to repair data and the capability to use it to service the customer's car wirelessly, while my customer would have to drive their car to my shop for that same service that I have to deliver through the OBD port, and that is only if I can access the data at all. This month, I paid a brand new fee to Stellantis to see basic data related to a check engine light in a longtime client's Jeep. We previously had access to this information through our current Scan Tools subscription services without additional paywalls. Suppose vehicle manufacturers keep the exclusive right to diagnostic and repair data. In that case, my shop's ability to provide our award-winning service will be delayed, compromised, or eliminated. The independent aftermarket is at the whim of the vehicle manufacturers, who plan to make billions of dollars from vehicle-generated data. Recently, Stellantis, formerly Chrysler, announced that they're adding an entire division for collecting and selling data from software-related services they project by 2030 will generate $20 billion in incremental revenue. Selling this data is big business, and we don't have to wonder why such time, effort, and resources are devoted to monopolizing it. The Repair Act allows the free market to work by prohibiting competition-busting barriers that vehicle manufacturers use to protect their competitive advantage. It will guarantee that our shops, chosen by the vehicle owner, can access the data they need to safely diagnose and repair vehicles today and in the future. If the dealership is their preferred shop, that is their right. They should also have that right guaranteed to come to my shop. It's your car, it should be your data, and right now it is not. Something worth adding, if only one company manufactures something, there's no reason to improve upon it. With a vibrant aftermarket of multiple companies competing for market share, we promote innovation, safety enhancement, lower costs, better accessibility, and more jobs. Additionally, the average age of a passenger vehicle on the road is nearly 13 years old. OEMs stopped producing parts for those cars after 10 years. Aftermarket availability lasts long beyond that. Our cars are the second largest investment we make and often symbolize independence, especially for most of my clients who are well past retirement age. This issue has broad bipartisan support and co-sponsors in the House, led by fellow Floridian Congressman Neil Dunn. Thank you, sir, for your hard work on this legislation. The Repair Act is supported by numerous organizations that represent 90% of the aftermarket. A list is in my written testimony. All of you who have given your support in Congress realize that the only way to protect affordable and accessible repair is to have an enforceable statute that protects the rights of the vehicle owner to choose their repair shop. Congress should act to codify this right to preserve consumer choice in vehicle repair, and today's hearing is the start of that process. Thank you for taking this first step.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I'll begin the questioning and recognize myself for 5 minutes. We have assembled a great panel today to voice their opinions on these proposals, including, again, my fellow Floridian here, Kathleen. I want to ensure that one voice is not overlooked in these important discussions on event ticketing, and then that's the voice of the artist, the athlete, and performer. These are the people who drive the sales of all these events. I hope stakeholders here today will also commit to including them in the process for broader ticketing reform, so we need to speak to them as well. And I know they were invited, but the response was late, but we want to hear from them as well. No one should be left out of these deliberations, and the ranking member said she agrees as well, including the People's House, which is so important because we represent our constituents. And these issues, again, affect them directly. I know myself and Ranking Member Schakowsky are committed to moving our legislation, expanding our group of stakeholders to address event ticketing and what consumers deserve. We have spent months talking with stakeholders and won't be distracted by proposals that have not been able to build a consensus or have yet to face public scrutiny. I'm pleased that we're instead working through a bipartisan committee process here that can pass the House and provide heightened transparency and protection for artists, venues, ticketing companies, and most of all, the fans and consumers. Keeping on the issue of ticketing, a topic so important to our small local venues across the nation, such as Ruth Eckerd Hall. It's not very far from you, Kathleen. It's in the Tampa Bay area, small venue. They get national awards. So anyway, let me ask this question of Mr. Touhey. I've heard from venues that the BOSS and SWIFT Act require a ticket reseller to disclose if they are selling a ticket not in their possession. Do you think a reseller should ever be able to sell a ticket not in their possession?
No.
Mr. Touhey, okay.
No.
Okay. Would simply disclosing that the ticket is not in their possession go far enough, in your opinion?
In my opinion, no, it would not.
Okay. What would you recommend?
Banning speculative tickets altogether.
Thank you. Mr. Touhey, currently state ticketing laws differ across the country, as you know. How does that impact an artist on a tour visiting different markets or a venue manager operating venues across the state? And then I have a follow-up, if you could respond to that.
It makes it more difficult on the artist and venue management companies because they have to conform to different laws and do different things in different states, and sometimes they may choose not to play a market based on some of those.
Okay, so the question is the follow-up question, which is obvious. Would having one federal standard help how tickets are sold for tours with stops in more than one state?
Yes, it would.
Okay, very good. I know those are tough questions, but thank you very much. All right, why don't I go ahead and yield back the balance of my time, but I tell you, this is a tremendous hearing. And, you know, this is why we're here, to hear from the representatives of the people. So I appreciate you participating. All right, why don't I yield I'm going to yield 5 minutes to the ranking member, Ms. Schakowsky. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this panel. I think we're all pretty much on the same page. I want to thank Mr. Gentine for talking about the Consumer Product Safety Commission. I think it is a small but mighty agency that needs the funding to be able to really protect consumers, and on the issues that I had raised on the right to repair and on the Ticket Act. I certainly want to thank all of you so much, including Mr. Touhey, your recommendations on how to make it better. But I do want to ask is it Breyault? A question and ask you, what do you think are the best ways that hidden junk fees that we can protect against those?
So thank you for the question, Congresswoman. The best way to protect consumers from junk fees is to pass all-in pricing requirements. Junk fees are pervasive and pernicious, and consumers hate them. They add 27 to 31% to the cost of every ticket. I understand that putting on a concert or sporting event costs money and that those costs have to be recouped, but consumers just want to know what it is they're going to pay when they're going to get in. Not only would all-in pricing address frustration, we think it would also promote competition. Because right now what happens in far too many instances is that consumers see one price in one place, say Ticketmaster, and see another price on a secondary site, and then they don't actually know what that cost is until they get to the very end. So it's harder for those entities to compete with each other. And we've actually heard on the record from all of the stakeholders in the community, from Ticketmaster and secondary sellers as well, that they all want to do all-in pricing, and some of them have committed to do so to the White House, but none of them wants to be first. They're all afraid of losing market share. That, to me, is a sign of a market failure, and why we believe that Congress should step in with bills like the Boston Swift Act and the Ticket Act to mandate that kind of all-in pricing that helps consumers.
Well, I also want to talk to you about speculative pricing, and maybe Mr. Touhey, you mentioned something about that, and how it actually does, in real life, harm consumers.
Right. So the term speculative ticketing or speculative tickets is a bit of a misnomer, because what is being sold is not actually tickets at all. It's more akin to an option to buy. And unfortunately, the way that they are sold is often deceptive to consumers. Speculative tickets may be intermingled with tickets that resellers actually have in hand.
Are they going to look the same, though, to the consumer?
Well, what the consumer actually receives when they buy one of these speculative tickets is usually just some confirmation that they have purchased something. And the ticket may not actually be delivered until much closer to the event. So in the meantime, a consumer thinks they're going to see Taylor Swift or Bruce Springsteen or another artist. They start doing things like booking hotel rooms or airfare or babysitters so that they can go to the show. And what happens too often is that the person who was selling that option or ticket to them finds out later on that they can't actually acquire the ticket at the price that they sold it for. And so they simply say, sorry, you're out of luck. They give them their money back, but in the meantime, the consumer is out all these other costs. That's why speculative ticketing is so controversial. And we think that reforms like the Boston Swift Act and the Ticket Act and the ones considered in the speculative ticketing discussion draft will go after that problem.
So, Mr. Touhey, you just think it should just be prohibited altogether, that there be this kind of maybe we'll have a ticket for you policy?
Correct. A speculative ticket should be banned completely. They're fraud and serve no good to the consumer.
Thank you. I also just want to thank those of you representing the idea of the right to repair, and I appreciate your personal story about what happens to you as a person involved in those transactions. And so I'm hoping that working together that we're going to be able to achieve what all of you have represented today. What a great panel. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly, well, let me do this after the chairperson, but I want to ask a couple questions. But let me go ahead and recognize the chairperson for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Benavidez, I'm aware there's a commitment amongst the Automotive Service Association, the Society of Collision Repair Specialists, and the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. And this agreement is meant to ensure consumer choice in vehicle repair decisions and acts as a commitment from the automakers to provide for sale, diagnostic, and repair information. I'm curious how this commitment would be enforced if one party, such as an automaker, failed or chose not to comply with it. What is the guarantee that all parties will abide by this commitment? And how would this agreement be implemented, such as how expensive it could be to repair EVs in the future?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, Congresswoman. We have been working with the automakers now since 2002, and we've set up the new 2023 agreement set up access panels to help in that regards. We have one access panel to get together to see if we have problems in the future, and then we set up the other panel to see cars in the future. So we have worked with them very well, and it's not in their best interest to go back on any of these any of our agreements with them. They want their consumer's vehicle fixed fast. They want it fixed efficient and repaired correctly. So they want us to have that information to do that. It's in their best interest to have it repaired efficiently.
Thank you. And if these are long-term commitments, what would be the objection to codify these into law so there's no question for the owner as to what their rights are?
We don't see that as necessary because we've worked with them for so well. We don't foresee us having to have legislation on that. If it got to that point where we support it, we would support it. But at this point, we are working together. They have been very upfront of what they're offering us, and they're willing to set up these panels to help make sure it's correct and for us.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Callahan, I appreciate you being here and the tone of your testimony. And as a small business owner and a woman-owned business, I just applaud what you're doing. You're the backbone of our economy, and we must ensure regulation does not hamper the ability to provide service to our communities. So I wanted to ask you, with the commitment these associations have in place, what is the obstacle that you're facing in servicing vehicles in your shop? And what are the unintended consequences that could happen should you try to repair someone's vehicle without this diagnostic information? We've heard this term bricking. Can you explain that?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. The questions. So the first question, as I understand, is why would we want to codify it? Currently, many of the European auto manufacturers do not participate in the MOUs that we've had in place since 2002 and with modification. So this would be me entrusting the future and my legacy of my business and those businesses around me to the economy and to my future and my children's future. I'm not willing to risk on a handshake, where they could back out at any time. As far as the bricking term, I'm a professional and I employ professionals, so without the proper information, I'm not going to risk harming a client's vehicle, and I'm going to have to send them back to the dealership in order to perform a proper repair if I can't be guaranteed the information that's correct.
You mentioned the European models. Would you speak to what obstacles you're facing in servicing the vehicles manufactured in the U.S.?
I would say, well, the first obstacle that I'm seeing is additional paywalls that were never there before. As I mentioned in my testimony, Stellantis I recently, within the last 3 weeks, had to pay yet another fee to get into access basic code information to figure out why their check engine light was on. These are not complicated repairs that I'm trying to address, you know, deep in the computer systems where we could cause bricking and all of the things, but this is a simple thing to see if your gas cap is loose or if you have a misfire or which cylinder is misfiring. And I had an additional paywall to get to it.
Thank you. We obviously have an ambitious agenda here today and lots of bills. I do have further questions, but I'll follow up in writing. But Mr. Breyault, I thank you for being here and for your advocacy on so many of these issues. Certainly one of the themes today is that we need to ensure that consumers know what they're getting and what they're paying for, and several of the bills address that, and more to come. I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I thank the chair, and I will submit my questions in writing as well, so in the interest of time. So what we'll do is I'll actually recognize the ranking member, Mr. Pallone, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman Bilirakis. I've already said that I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor of Representative Pascrell's Boss and Swift Act, which will help protect consumers when they buy tickets from primary ticket sellers and resellers. Sports fans and concertgoers shopping online for tickets should be told the total price of a ticket up front, not find themselves facing service fees, processing fees, delivery fees, and other junk fees at checkout. So let me start with Mr. Breyault. Why is it so important that all ticket sellers disclose the total cost of a ticket up front?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your sponsorship of the Boss Swift. Going all the way back to the Boss Act of 2016, you've been a leader on this, and we appreciate
You should know that many New Jersey fans are not happy with the fact that it was changed from just Boss to Boss and Swift. But go ahead.
With all due respect to New Jersey's fans, all-in pricing is a concept that all members of the live event ticketing ecosystem, including consumer groups like mine, believe should be mandated. There was a ticketing workshop in front of the FTC a few years ago, and they are all on the record saying that they want to do it, but none of them want to be first. It's a competitive market, and when one company institutes all-in pricing, but others don't, the competitors' offerings seem cheaper, and so you lose market share. This happened to StubHub several years ago, where they made the decision to begin offering an all-in price on secondary tickets, and all of their customers started flocking to SeatGeek and to Vivid Seats and others. And StubHub had to walk that back. So a pro-consumer reform that they wanted to do voluntarily, the market punished them by. We think that that's a symptom of market failure. We think that an all-in price would allow consumers to easily compare the price of a ticket no matter where they shop, whether they're buying on the primary from Ticketmaster or on secondary markets. That is the way that consumers should shop. They shouldn't have to click through multiple screens, provide personal information, log into an account just to see the price. That seems to me to be a way to try and hide the ball and make it harder for consumers to comparison shop. So we applaud you for including all-in pricing requirements in the Boston Swift Act. We applaud you, Ranking Member Schakowsky and Chairman Bilirakis, for including in the Ticket Act, and we hope to see those become law.
Thank you. So the Boston Swift Act prohibits ticket sellers from imposing restrictions on consumers who are unable to use tickets they have purchased and therefore want to transfer or sell them. So let me ask you, Mr. Wright, why is it so important that consumers retain the ability to transfer or sell a ticket that they purchased and rightfully own?
Sure, so there are several reasons for this. First of all, the modern ticket buying experience for a concert, say, consumers typically have to buy the tickets months in advance of the event. That's because that's when they are put on sale. In the intervening months, life happens. You lose a job, your kid gets sick, other things happen, you can't go to the event. So rather than lose the investment that they have in tickets, which can be hundreds or thousands of dollars depending on the event, we think that consumers should have the right to resell, to donate, to give away that ticket without interference by the event organizer. Unfortunately, what we have seen is increasing efforts by companies like Ticketmaster and others to restrict consumers' ability to do that. We think that the unintended consequences of that are, number one, that consumers are harmed when life happens and they can't go to the show, but also, unfortunately, it also has the unintended consequence of too often reinforcing the market power of the dominant player, Ticketmaster. If resale is restricted, for example, to only exchanges that Ticketmaster runs, then they are the ones who set the fees and other limitations on resale. One of the things that often doesn't get talked about in this space is that Ticketmaster is actually one of the dominant players in the ticket resale marketplace. Last year, they made more than $4.5 billion off of ticket resale. They have every incentive to want to monopolize this market just the way they have for primary ticketing, as well as event ownership and operation, artist management, and event promotion. So we think that consumers should have the ability to decide who they want to use to transfer their tickets, and that shouldn't be interfered with by the dominant player.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll recognize Dr. Bouchon for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman Bilirakis, for calling today's hearing on a variety of bills involving product safety and transparency. I'm glad that my discussion draft for legislation to standardize the ingredients disclosed on cleaning product labels is under consideration. Labeling standards exist for a variety of other products that we use and our constituents across the country use every day. From the milk and cereal we ate for breakfast this morning to the medications and vitamins we took, yet no such standard exists for cleaning products. California got it right in 2017. I don't say that very often. But it began requiring ingredient and usage information for cleaning products to be included on the label and available online at the manufacturer's website. My discussion draft would mirror this labeling regime and create a federal standard for cleaning products. Establishing clear guidelines would better protect American consumers and producers, and also would prevent states from having a variety of different laws affecting the economy and compliance from the companies that the companies have to comply with. So I encourage my colleagues across the aisle to work with me on fine-tuning and introducing the legislation. It's currently a discussion draft. Another bill for the committee today that I believe warrants careful examination is the Repair Act. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation says that over 70% of repairs done nationwide are completed at independent repair facilities. That number can be even higher in rural areas, like Indiana's 8th District, where a dealership may not be easily accessible. That's why I'm glad that automakers and auto repair industry have signed a new memorandum of understanding this summer to protect access to necessary diagnostic and repair information to consumers and repair shops. The legislation before us however, is about further preserving consumers' ability to get their vehicle serviced at a location that is convenient and appropriate for them. I support that conceptually, but I have some questions about this particular piece of legislation that I'd like to ask our witnesses. Mr. Benavidez, is that how you pronounce your name? Yes. Benavidez. The current text of the Repair Act allows the FTC to require access to data, and I quote, regardless of whether those types of data are related to motor vehicle repair. Might this kind of requirement give FTC too much leeway to require all kinds of unnecessary data sharing?
Yes, sir, that's the data that we are not concerned about, right? We want the repair data. We want the data to repair vehicles correctly. We want the data to repair them safely. That's the repair data we want. The other data that covers, we don't care where the local Starbucks is around the corner. That doesn't matter to us. We just want the information to fix them right, correctly.
Understood. And also, as a follow-up, this bill would require vehicle manufacturers to make vehicle-generated data available directly and wirelessly through a, and I quote, standardized access platform. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, has told automakers to not comply with state laws that have similar provisions, saying that malicious actors, and I quote, could utilize such open access to remotely command vehicles to operate dangerously. In addition to creating vulnerabilities for drivers, it is unclear who would be responsible for the safety of vehicle systems if such an attack would occur. So I guess, you know, opening the whole system up, particularly wirelessly, would create maybe a cyber risk. So under the bill, if a third party sent a command to a vehicle as a result, and it resulted in a safety failure, who would be responsible for that?
We don't know that, you know, and I think it was I'll turn this on. John Eagle got sued in Texas for not repairing a vehicle correctly. I'm a second-generation shop owner also, and we're a small business. And if we don't have access to that data, it was a $42 million lawsuit, and I think everybody got sued in that instance. And we're just, that scares us small business people to death about that much access to that vehicle. Even when they come to my shop, we just don't need that. We don't need that much data, right? We just need the data enough to fix the vehicles correctly.
Yeah, I want to make it clear, I mean, like I said, rural America, 70% of people get their vehicles repaired. It seems to me that data specifically related to repair is important, but other extraneous data that could be under the purview of the FTC under the current language in the law doesn't sound like it's very the right thing to do potentially. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Bouchon. Now I'll recognize Representative Castor for her 5 minutes of questioning. I know she has quite a few venues, small venues in her district, large venues as well that I've frequented. So anyway, we'll recognize you for 5 minutes. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, my partner from the Tampa Bay region. Thank you very much, and to Rep. Schakowsky for organizing this hearing, of good bipartisan work here. And thank you to the panel. Your testimony's been very strong and persuasive. And junk fees are just out of control. They're aggravating. I hear about it all of the time. You don't just have to have been interested in buying Taylor Swift tickets or Beyonce tickets or Bruce Springsteen tickets this summer. It's just out of control. It's everything you try to buy on the internet now. You're going to be, you're not really sure, are you really buying it from the originator or not? It also applies to hotel and motel bookings, that there are a lot of scam artists out there, so it's good to see a bill on that as well. But I also want to thank President Joe Biden because he's kind of elevated the issue as well, and I think this is an area of where we can work together in a bipartisan way to get something done. Now, also on right to repair, Ms. Callahan, thank you very much for coming up from the Sunshine State. Since the election of another auto repair shop owner, Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, she's really taken this issue to the next level. You can't sit down with her on the floor of the House without hearing about right to repair. So it's good to see that maybe we can work in a bipartisan way on that too. And I also want to highlight the Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act, which needs to be reauthorized by this committee. It saves lives. It helps educate consumers about how to keep their kids safe, especially when it comes to pools. But there is kind of an elephant in the room here today, and you all have highlighted it, Mr. Breyault. You highlighted the importance, Mr. Gentine, of the Federal Trade Commission. It's our agency that keeps consumers safe, battling fraudsters and scam artists. Consumer Product Safety Commission is vital for families to ensure they're buying safe strollers and cribs and toys. We're now faced with shutting down these agencies because of what's going on in kind of the feud in the Republican Party. And Chairman Bilirakis started with Schoolhouse Rock, the old nostalgic, I'm just a bill, I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. So, well, they want to just take the bill and light it on fire, unfortunately. And we just can't, this is so costly, and it just upends people's lives. Mr. Breyault, I noticed in the FTC shutdown plan, they say they're not going to be able to pursue the vast bulk of its competition and consumer protection investigations or prosecutions. I mean, this is a recipe for fraudsters and scam artists must be celebrating. They're like, yeah, take the cops off the beat. So tell us what folks should anticipate if you shut down the Federal Trade Commission and Consumer Product Safety Commission, if they're not able to conduct investigations and go after scam artists. What's going to happen?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. The Federal Trade Commission has a vast authority to police unfair and deceptive acts and practices throughout the U.S. economy, and consumers depend on them to protect them from those practices. At NCL, I run a project called fraud.org, which is all about protecting consumers from scammers. And we take complaints from consumers directly. Last year, we sent about 5,000 of those complaints to the Federal Trade Commission and its Consumer Sentinel database. Those submissions, along with millions of others that the Commission receives, inform the agency's ability to identify trends and to go after the worst of the worst, the people who are out there to take consumers' last dollars. And we hear heartbreaking stories from consumers every day, many of whom have lost their life savings because of fraud. So the FTC is a critical consumer protection agency to protect them from these scammers. And these aren't just sort of people in their basement. These are organized criminals who are located around the world and are incredibly savvy and good at what they do. I don't think it's hyperbole. No one is safe from fraud. Even if you think that you are too smart to fall for the next scam, let me tell you, there's a scammer out there who has a pitch designed to entrap just someone like you. And so the FTC is the most important cop on the beat there is to protect consumers from those scams. Without the funding and the people there to do that work, consumers are going to be vulnerable to fraudsters who are out there to steal their information and steal every last dime from them. So we think it's critical that the agency be allowed to do that work. The same goes for the CPSC. I underlined what's said of my colleague here, that it's the best bargain in the federal government, and I couldn't agree more. It is the agency that takes complaints from consumers, that finds out if products within the most important place in most of our existence, our homes, are safe or not, if they are going to harm our children. And let me tell you, not having an agency like that be able to do its job should keep every consumer up at night. So we absolutely think that these agencies should have the funding that they need to do the job that they do, because it is so important.
Important message to everyone. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you, the gentlelady's time has expired, and I now recognize myself for my 5 minutes of questioning. And also, I would follow up in saying that should the Democrat control Senate and the president shut down the government ultimately, FTC has 3 weeks of funding beyond the 30th. Also, CBJC has significant fund sources that are still available to be used beyond the end of our fiscal period. I would like to begin on a different subject and then get back to some of my bread and butter questions as well. We're also discussing H.R. 2964, the WIPPES Act, introduced by my friend and colleague from Michigan, probably promoted by one of our former colleagues, Representative Candace Miller, who is the Director of Public Works in Macomb County, and is a tiger on this issue of wipes getting into the system and the challenges with that. The legislation will require manufacturers to clearly label whether baby wipes, cleaning wipes, and the like are truly non-flushable. Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm in that spot right now. I'd ask unanimous consent to include 4 related documents in the record, and without objection, they'll be submitted. Mr. Breyault, briefly, how will the legislation, which is supported by the wipe manufacturers and the nation's clean water agencies, help save consumers and communities money?
Mr. Vice Chair, thank you for the question. Cleaning wipes are big business. In North America in 2019, they generated an estimated $2.5 billion in sales. Unfortunately, many consumers flush those wipes down the toilet.
And I've seen those big balls at the water treatment plants.
Yes, sir. And those are not cheap to clean. The estimated annual cost to clean water utilities is $441 million that the flushing of cleaning wipes plays. And that translates into $7.65 in added annual cost per household because of this. In other states like Illinois, it's estimated that the cost can be as much as $25 per year, and those costs are undoubtedly passed along to every one of us, even if we flush cleaning wipes or not, in the form of higher utility bills. but particularly for consumers who live in rural areas who depend on septic systems. Flushable wipes and the damage that they cause to plumbing systems can be incredibly costly. We're talking about saving consumers from junk fees. How about saving consumers from the $1,775 average cost to fix a broken septic system? I'll tell you, I grew up in a house that had one, and I would probably be in the doghouse for many months if something I did broke our septic system. So we think the WIPPES Act is common sense legislation that will give consumers the information they need to hopefully save on some of those bills.
Yeah, having a septic system myself, I'd like to wipe out this problem.
Well said.
Forgive me. Michigan is the auto state, and we're home to a robust auto ecosystem, regardless of strikes and the things that go on. With OEMs, auto shops, dealerships, and aftermarket manufacturers that each serve the consumer in their own way. We want to make sure that consumers continue to have that wide range of choices. To that effect, I ask for unanimous consent to include a letter from the President of the Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association into the record. Without objection, that will be submitted. Mr. Benavidez, your testimony indicates an openness to legislation. Would you be supportive of a federal preemptive standard that addresses right to repair?
No, sir, not at this moment. We feel that this agreement, this MOU, is going to be in great effect with the automakers, and starting on Friday, they're starting to set up the panels. So at this moment, we don't see the need.
Okay. Ms. Callahan, how would you navigate a multi-state ecosystem related to consumers or independent repair shops addressing diagnostic information? And secondly, would one preemptive standard be preferred so that there is a consistent rule across the country?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I believe that one standard across the country would make it simpler for consumers to understand their rights to repair, whether they're in Maine or California. We're a society of people that move from state to state and travel from state to state. So having to navigate different laws for simply having your vehicle repaired, I think a standardization would be necessary. I had an example this morning. I had a client that was driving through South Carolina, and they were unable to get service on their Infiniti by a small local shop and had to be towed 90 miles to North Carolina in order to have their car serviced, and it took 4 days, and it was $7,000.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I have some questions relative to the fact I co-chair the Motorcycle Caucus and just bought a brand new 1970 trail bike so I could have something to fill my massive amount of free time with and working on.
Congratulations.
But concerned about this very thing, and we'll submit these questions for further answer. With that, I yield and recognize Representative Kelly for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Chair Bilirakis and Ranking Member Schakowsky for holding this important hearing this morning. I also want to thank the 5 witnesses for your testimony. Consumer safety and protection is vital to all citizens. It is a duty of Congress to protect the public from unfair, harmful business practices and assure that consumer products are safe. As a member of this subcommittee, I've worked hard to defend consumers and provide oversight. Just last August, the President signed Reese's Law legislation I was proud to sponsor, which helped protect children from ingesting button cell batteries. I'm committed to continuing that fight. I will soon reintroduce the Consumer Equity Protection Act, which will create a task force within the Federal Trade Commission's Bureau of Consumer Protection to advise the Commission on matters related to equity in consumer protection. And I will soon be reintroducing my Protecting Seniors from Emergency Scams Act, which will require the FTC to report on and increase awareness of scams targeting older adults. However, all of this work is only beneficial if the government agencies tasked with protecting consumers remain sufficiently funded. House Republicans have proposed to cut the Consumer Product Safety Commission's budget by over 9%. Mr. Gentine, how would such severe budget cuts affect the ability of the CPSC to carry out its vital mission?
Thank you very much for the question, Congresswoman. And CPSC's budget has long been probably lower than it should be. And only in recent years has the number started to tick up. So in some sense, I guess it would be helpful because it would only be a couple years worth of rollback. They were at those sorts of levels very recently. But I think we all saw, and I think the stakeholder community in general would agree that those levels weren't sufficient. You know, I obviously work mostly with the industry side, with manufacturers and retailers in the space, and my clients don't benefit when CPSC is underfunded and things take too long. When we have reports that we don't believe should be recalls, we want to see those resolved quickly. When we do have recalls, we want to get them out. You know, it is not in business's interest to hurt consumers. And when a problem needs to be taken care of, we want it taken care of quickly. And CPSC at the funding levels it was at a few years ago, at the kinds of levels you're talking about there, simply did not have the bandwidth. No matter how deeply the folks there care about their mission, and they do, there just aren't enough of them and aren't enough hours in the day.
Thank you. There are several bills being considered on today's legislative hearing that will require CPSC to take certain steps, like setting mandatory safety standards for lithium-ion batteries, using AI in a pilot program, and providing federal funding to improve pool safety. Should Congress provide the CPSC with the resources needed to handle these tasks?
In general, certainly. I think there are bills, you mentioned the lithium-ion bill, that to the extent I have a criticism of that bill, it's on the timeline. It's a 6-month timeline for a complicated issue of lithium-ion batteries in a complicated usage scenario in micromobility products. That's going to take a lot of work. I think it's going to take longer than 6 months, candidly, and would take an amount of work that I think would distract from other CPSC priorities. So I would say that bill probably does need resources to go with it.
So I'm guessing from what you're saying that a government shutdown would affect CBC's ability to both carry out its mission, and that also you believe that you need to be funded at a higher level than last fiscal year.
Yes, to both of those.
All right. I would now like to discuss quickly the Online Dating Safety Act that this committee is considering. In short, this discussion draft will require online dating services to provide, or online service providers to issue a fraud ban notification to members of the online dating services the member has received and responded to a message from a banned member of the online dating service. Mr. Breyault, am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Can you speak to the harms caused to consumer by online scams, and more specifically, romance scammers, and how do perpetrators of these scams attempt to evade monitoring?
Yes, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. Fraud is reportedly an $8.8 billion. There's $8.8 billion in fraud losses reported to the Federal Trade Commission in 2022. That was an increase of nearly $2.6 billion over 2021. And most fraud experts that I work with agree that that number represents a significant undercount. It's only the fraud that gets reported, and we know that fraud is a very underreported crime. Romance scams are particularly devastating to their victims because of the nature of the scam. They are also incredibly costly. At fraud.org, these types of scams are usually the most expensive type of scam for their victims that we hear from on a consistent basis. The Trade Commission last year reported that median losses were $4,400 to these scams, but I'll tell you, we hear stories all the time from consumers who lose their entire life savings to romance scammers. So it is definitely a significant problem. The bill, the online dating bill, attempts to go after that by going after one of the favorite MOs that romance scammers use. They often first contact potential victims on online dating websites through the messaging services that those sites and apps provide. The MO we see is that consumers are quickly, the victims of these scams are quickly advised to try and get off of these messaging platforms onto insecure platforms like email, instant message, or, sorry.
No, my time is up, so I don't want to be inconsiderate. Can you send us a response to that
I'll be happy
question?
to, yes.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'll recognize Representative Duncan from the state of South Carolina for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I stated in the AV hearing we had a couple of weeks back, my main concern in the automotive marketplace is maintaining consumer choice. That means internal combustion engines as well as EVs. cars that we drive and cars that drive themselves. And the ability to use independent repair and aftermarket shops as well as the dealerships. The free market actually works. I want to thank Dr. Dunn for the legislation he's brought today. Ms. Callahan, and I hate that that incident's happened in South Carolina that you mentioned, but thanks for being here today. As the owner of Xpertech Auto Repair, what would you say the ratio is to auto dealerships and independent repair shops? I know in my county it's probably 5 independent small business repair shops to every 1 dealership. What do you think across the nation? Is it 10 to 1, 5 to 1, 3 to 1? Just
Thank you for
guess.
the question, Congressman. I have to be honest, I'm not sure of that answer. I know dealerships own about 30% of the bays across the country. In my particular market, we have, within our small area, we have 1 dealership to 15 independent repair shops.
Yeah, these are small, independent, privately owned, small businesses usually. For the most part, I take mine to an independent mechanic, friend of mine, but I have the choice to take it to a dealership if I want to. Unfortunately, I had a 1967 Ford F-150 Sport Ranger pickup. I think I had a 302. I could climb in and work on it. It was so big and the engine was so simple. But anyway, what are the specific issues you're seeing right now with the ability to repair?
Immediately, most recently, as I said, I'm seeing paywalls that have never been there before, which creates an accessibility issue for basic information. Not being able to reach certain modules in the computer through our scan tools, they're just blocked out, where we can't diagnose basic misfire repairs sometimes with certain manufacturers. So, as a small business owner, I've made a decision to stop servicing certain vehicle makes and models completely, so that I don't not look like a professional to my client.
Thank you. Are there automakers that you deal with who aren't operating within the memorandum of understanding?
As I said earlier, we've seen historical data with most of the European manufacturers consistently. I will say the Stellantis group is probably, of the U.S. automakers, one of the worst offenders. They make it very, very difficult to do business with and service their vehicles, especially when it comes to electronics.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have a 06 Chevy Duramax diesel. I'm having some code issues on the glow plugs. So anyway, love to talk to you. I'm going to shift gears. Mr. Touhey, I know you have the venue perspective on this ticketing issue. I wonder if we had the artist perspective, how would that differ? For instance, does Bruce Springsteen support the Boss Act that's named for him?
I can't speak to Bruce Springsteen himself, but in general, the venues support the artist perspective. The venues serve 2 customers in general, the customer that's buying the ticket and the customer that's coming to perform.
Yeah.
So our interests align typically with the artist.
I think he does. Taylor Swift, does she support the Boss Act and the Swift Act, or is this just another piece of covert narcissism, to quote one of her lyrics?
I think, as I stated in my testimony, there are good aspects to the Boston Swift Act, but there are improvements needed to really make it effective.
Yeah, I would note that the Recording Academy has noted its strong opposition to Boston Swift while supporting a ban on speculative ticketing and the provision in Chairman Bilirakis' Ticket Act. And I'll echo my support for their position here. Artists should be able to choose how their music performances are sold. It's their music. And I hope that as we move forward, Mr. Chairman, on this issue, we'll always keep the artist perspective in mind. I have opinions on songwriters, I have opinions on artists and how money flows through it, protecting those that actually create the product that the performers sing. And with that, I yield back.
Good questions. Now I recognize my friend Mr. Soto from the state of Florida for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman, and may I say you're a great Floridian. You know, the Consumer Protection Safety Commission and Federal Trade Commission do great work. I am excited to hear that there's a bipartisan continuing resolution coming over from the Senate, and something worthy for us to all consider as we make sure to keep the government open and serve the American people. And speaking of bipartisanship, thank you, Chair Bilirakis and Ranking Member Schakowsky, as well as my co-introducers, Representatives Burgess, Trahan, and Guthrie, for helping introduce the Consumer Safety Technology Act, H.R. 4814, and thank you, Mr. Gentine, for your positive testimony. We know that the crooks, they already are using AI, and so the cops on the beat definitely need to harness the power of artificial intelligence to be able to protect consumers, especially when, and Mr. Gentine, you talked about the vast amounts of data that they have to sort through. We're talking about an AI pilot program that would track trends in injuries from products, identifying product hazards, monitoring sale of recalled products, identifying products that don't meet important requirements for product safety. So walk us through a little further, how much, based upon the number of folks we have at the FTC, how could they possibly do this job anymore without having the use of AI to assist them across the internet?
And Congressman, thank you. It's a great question. And unfortunately, to some extent, the answer is they can't. The economy that it exists today, the amount of information flowing through the economy that exists today, the number of sellers, resellers, et cetera, is just orders of magnitude different than it was in 1972. The agency has certainly grown since then, but I think an evolution in the ability of those 569 FTEs to sort of force multiply and do more with one person is absolutely critical. I mentioned in my testimony the retailer reporting program. I think that's vital. You're talking about things that are offered for sale. The biggest chunk of data CPSC has to deal with is actually at the ports. The products that are coming in, they surveil, I think it is roughly 2% of in-jurisdiction products that come in through the ports. And the ability to, you're never going to have enough port inspectors to inspect everything, and we don't want everything to be inspected. That would create delays we don't need. What we need is the ability to identify before products come off the boat which ones we should be looking at and which ones we don't need to spend our time on. And the use of tools like artificial intelligence to better refine that sort of targeting would be absolutely essential.
So the bill would also keep supply chains moving by ensuring we're still protecting consumers, an issue that has been really important to this committee. Also, as we talk about having a bipartisan budget and trying to find efficiencies, so this would make the FTC more efficient and potentially either save us money or limit the amount of additional funding that may be needed. Would you say that's correct?
Oh, I'd say that's absolutely true. If fewer people can do more, then fewer new people at least are needed. I don't think the agency should be shrinking any.
Thank you. I'm also proud to be co-chair of the Vehicle Data Access Caucus. This is a dizzying issue because there are really good arguments on both sides. Both of you have represented your positions well. Mr. Benavidez, do owners own their own data under the MOUs? Is there any friction because of the MOU system right now and users and car owners owning the data and being able to work with different repair shops?
So right now, we don't see any issues in gathering data. And do customers own it? I think that's the big question, through the auto manufacturers, through the Google accessors, through everybody, who owns that data, right? That's always the big question.
Well, I could tell you this committee believes it's the owners that own the data, the owners of the vehicles. And then Ms. Callahan, I know there was a lot of discussion of a memorandum of understanding as an option for repair shops. Where do you think that falls short? Because you had talked about it a little bit in your testimony.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I believe that simply where it falls short is that the memorandum of understanding is optional. An original equipment manufacturer can back out at any time, and there's no consequence.
So if it was either mandatory or the industry contract was more enforceable, would that be helpful too?
As the MOU is written, there's some language in there that it says, I made a note here, it says, this also applies to telematic data needed to diagnose and repair a vehicle if not otherwise available. So in that instance, the data could be available via the OBD port to me, but available wirelessly to the dealership of the manufacturer's choice, and they could repair it. It's essentially wirelessly when a client would have to bring their car back to me physically for the repair.
A lot of us are paying close attention to this. I appreciate both of your testimonies today, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Now I'll recognize Dr. Dunn for his 5 minutes of question. I think I know what he's going to focus on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So when I buy a product, a house, a motorcycle, an airplane, it belongs to me. When you buy a product, it belongs to you. Currently, when we buy vehicles, our options to repair or service those vehicles, our property, is being increasingly restricted. Now, I think this should be simple. Either I buy a car, in which case I own it, or I lease a car, and then we just come to contractual agreement about who actually controls repairs and maintenance. Now, as technology continues to develop faster than consumer protection laws, it's essential for an update. And I believe my bill, H.R. 906, the Repair Act, does that. I'm grateful for the support of Representatives Davidson, Glusenkamp, Perez, Boyle, 42 other co-sponsors, including Mr. Wahlberg, who just spoke, and I thank the ranking member of the committee for her endorsement earlier this morning. As vehicle data becomes more important to make repairs, it's unacceptable for the vehicle manufacturers to exclude independent repair shops from accessing that data, especially if they're the owners, as my colleague, Mr. Soto, said. I have a pickup truck. I need to get the thing repaired. It's the right of owners to repair their equipment, their vehicles, and to choose where it's repaired. I think forcing auto owners back into dealerships repairs not only leaves a huge existing industry behind, it veers towards vertical integration and monopolistic behavior. The Repair Act fixes this, just like the hardworking mechanics who fix our cars. Lastly, MOUs absolutely do not go far enough to protect the consumers and the consumer choice. There are unenforceable, as has been said here, whereas a law guaranteeing that actually defines what ownership of the vehicle or whatever the product is means. Chairman Bilirakis, I'd like to submit an op-ed for the record entitled Repair Act will guarantee the right to safe, affordable, accessible vehicle repair.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. I wrote this piece, published it in the Hill in response to that MOU we mentioned earlier, that I think fails to be representative of the industry at large. Mr. Chair, another submission for the record. This is an outtake from the Auto Care Service Retail Outlets, the 2024 fact book on auto repair shops.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. What this shows is that there are over 263,000 independent repair shops in the United States. However, in that MOU, we represent exactly 1,200 independent repair shops. That amounts to less than 0.5% of the repair shops in the country, and I don't think that an MOU that's unenforceable, that only includes less than 0.5% of an industry is representative of that industry's choices. Ms. Callahan, you have an extensive list of accomplishments and awards in your history. You have some firsthand experience in auto repair and the challenges that your shops face with the emerging technology and the threat of vertical integration. I'd like to know why you came, you have a small private business. You came here all the way from Florida to testify. Why'd you spend the time, money, and effort to come out here and advocate for this act?
Thank you for the question. The simple answer is if I don't fight for my shop and my legacy and for my children or whoever my predecessor, hopefully my daughter, is, who's going to do it?
Yeah, no, I love that answer. I feel the same way about medicine. Also, you live in a fairly rural part of Florida, as I do. Without the Repair Act, should rural vehicle owners be a little concerned about getting their car repaired?
I believe 100% they should be worried. The example that I said earlier about the couple that broke down in South Carolina, they did, by the way, say they were the nicest people that took care of them. But that was surprising to me and came through an email just yesterday that they were unable to get their car repaired in South Carolina by a small.
I want to go ahead to another topic you mentioned too, the data. So the OEMs already have a whole lot of data on our cars. What do they do with this data? Do they sell it to people?
That is my understanding, that Stellantis has created an entire division to monetize it.
But you can't have the data to repair it. Can you tell us what would you foresee would happen to your shop in the next 5 years if the Repair Act does not become law?
I foresee that I will have a very limited capability of working on cars more and more as the technological advancements continue. I'll be able to do tires and maybe some brakes, but anything electronic and anything safety related will be locked out.
Well, thank you for your testimony. This is an enormous industry out there. Everybody who's ever bought a tool at Home Depot, try to fix his car, all that goes away. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Now I'll recognize Ms. Dingle for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an extremely important subject, and I think I've talked to a lot of people on all sides. As you may know, there is robust competition within the automotive repair sector. Consumers have a range of options when looking to have their cars serviced or repaired, including a dealer repair facility, a national chain repair, or an independent repair facility. Independent repair facilities currently perform most of the diagnostic and repair work, especially out-of-warranty repair work. Mr. Benavidez, and I'm going to ask you to be quick or short in your answers because I have a lot of questions. Can you describe what tools and information automakers currently make available to independent repair facilities to diagnose, repair, and maintain vehicles? And is this the same data they provide to the dealerships?
They offer multitudes of scan equipment, and yes, they provide it to us and the same that they have.
So is there evidence that the consumers are being harmed by the current state of competition in automotive repair?
Not to our knowledge as our associate.
In July 2023, the trade association representing nearly all automobile manufacturers entered into an agreement with your organization to ensure that the aftermarket continues to have parity with the dealers. Mr. Benavidez, can you go into more details about this agreement that my colleague was just talking about?
So this agreement, it started in 2002 when we signed the first one. It has worked up until this point, but because of the innovation now with vehicles, they've added electric vehicles, electric hybrid vehicles, and then even so, Tesla and Rivian came on board to the MOU. So that was very important to us to see them jump on the MOU also because they know it should work, right? If they give us a seat at the table and we're able to talk to them about the issues, they're going to get solved, and they want them solved. That's the issue. The dealerships want them solved. There is no way dealerships can repair all these vehicles out there. There is no way. They need the independent shops. They need us to fix them correctly. They need us to fix them properly so that someone doesn't say, well, I don't want to buy that vehicle anymore because it's too hard to fix. They want us to have this information. They need us to have this information, and they need us to help repair these vehicles.
So I want to also, my colleague raised another issue that's very important to me, privacy considerations, which someday it's not this committee that doesn't have bipartisan agreement, it's the larger institution. But Mr. Benavidez, are there privacy and data security issues with providing independent repair facilities access to the tools and information needed to perform vehicle diagnostics and repairs? And as vehicle information is increasingly in electronic format, is there a risk that adversaries can obtain access to vehicle data of customers?
Yes, it is a very big concern, and it's a big concern in my industry, especially in the collision industry when we bring these vehicles in because we scan them. That's the first thing we do when they come into these shops. We scan them before and after repairs. There's a lot of information in those vehicles that can scare the heck out of us independent shop owners. Can it happen? Yes. There's a lot of information, including doctors, where you live, where you shop, everything, and that access is very scary. And again, we just need the repair data. That's what we need, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what the MOU guaranteed us.
So let me follow up on that. Do independent repair shops have robust cybersecurity protections in place to combat these cyber threats and attacks?
Yes, we are learning about it.
You're learning about it, but how do we ensure that every independent repair shop has that? Because the customer becomes at risk. And as you were talking, I mean, it's what we got to deal with someday in our privacy legislation is the kind of information that could easily become available about any individual customer.
Right. And Congressman, we're learning about it. We're dealing with it. It's a very complex issue, especially for shops like mine that in the past did not have to worry about that, and now we do. And so in shops educated like mine and through ASA shops that are educated, yes, there are cybersecurity issues and things in place. For rural places out in the middle of nowhere, I don't know that answer.
Okay, I'm gonna have one more question, because I'm running out of time, but I could keep going. Who will be held liable, who's liable, and otherwise accountable for the handling of vehicle data?
I think it's all of us. I think everybody involved. I think anybody who touches that car last is liable for that data. Anybody who sells that equipment is liable for that data. There are a lot of people responsible for that data.
And how do you know where it got leaked and who was? It's a real issue we got to deal with. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And that's why we're having these hearings. The process actually works, doesn't it?
Yep.
Okay, very good. So it's good to hear both sides. All right, now we're going to ask Ms. Lesko to go ahead and question the panel. Thank you. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here today. My first question is for Mr. Benavidez. I'm on your website. It says, your association's website. It says you're dedicated to and governed by independent service and repair professionals. And so you said you don't think the Repair Act is needed, but then you have a person sitting next to you, Ms. Callahan, who thinks it is needed. And so I'm trying to figure out why she thinks that and why your group, which represents independent repair shops, doesn't. I was wondering if you wanted to address some of her concerns. I think her concerns, what she said, if I'm not mistaken, is it cost her money to get this data. Two, that European car manufacturers aren't part of this agreement, and that the agreement is a handshake and she doesn't want to rely on it. I think that's kind of summing it up. And so is this agreement that you have with the car manufacturers, they're still allowed to charge money, right? And the one thing she said that I'd like you to clarify, Mrs. Callahan said, was that, now I lost my train of thought. So if you could just reference what her concerns are, I'd be interested to understand the difference.
So, and it's interesting to hear that person that couldn't get their vehicle serviced in that area. Was it because the shop didn't have access to that information? We don't think that's the case. They probably didn't either want to pay for that information, didn't know how to gather that information, or didn't have the tools and equipment to repair that vehicle. If we have those, we have all the information, right? We're able to gather that information. Sometimes it's hard for us to find, but we find it and it's accessible, right? Sometimes you have to pay for it, sometimes you don't. And that's just the nature of where we work. Is it easier for OEMs to get that information? Yes, because they're dealing with one specific vehicle, right? Sometimes we have to go searching for it longer or pay a subscription fee, but we can gather that information. The other question was?
European car manufacturers aren't part of the agreement. I don't know if Toyota and Honda is or not. Yeah.
They are not, but we
Okay.
are in talks with them, and hopefully they'll come soon. Like I said, Tesla and Rivian just came on, which is a big step for us on the electrical cars, and they understand the importance of that MOU, so they jumped on board as well.
All right, and just so that I get a better understanding of why there's a difference of an opinion, especially since she's an independent repair owner and you represent independent repair shops, are you funded at all by the car manufacturers or car dealers
No,
or anything
ma'am.
like that?
You have to understand that I'm also an independent repair
Okay.
shop. I've been an independent repair shop since 1978. My dad opened the business, second generation owner. We've been in the
Okay.
independent repair facility, and every one of our board of directors on our association is an independent shop owner, either mechanical or collision. So we're all in the vested interest of the independent shops. That's what we do, and that's what I've done all my life.
And I do remember the other question. Ms. Callahan said she thinks that the car owner should own the car data. What are your thoughts on that? Like, why shouldn't they?
I think they should, but it's a complex issue because there's a lot of data, right? Like Ms. Dingle said, that where does that data go, and whoever worked on it last, where does it go and who owns it, right? And we're fighting that with our collision industry conference. I'm on the data program, and that's what we're fighting with. How do we protect that data? How do we keep that data? Ultimately, it is the customer's data. It's sometimes scary of where it goes.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is for Mr. Breyault. Research out of Brigham Young University found 14% of rapes happened during the first meetup arranged through a dating app. What steps should these apps take to protect their users from this type of violence?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. And for those victims, no amount of action that a dating app takes can undo that crime. But what they can do to reduce the risk of that is to be more proactive in warning their users about fraudulent activity on the app. So the Online Dating Act that we're talking about today would let them know when someone that they have messaged has been banned from that dating app for fraudulent activity. Most of these apps and websites have things in place to monitor them. We want to make sure that that people are being notified when someone is banned to hopefully prevent horrible instances like the one you just described.
If they're banned, how are they on it?
Well, so they are not banned immediately. Scammers will create multiple accounts.
Right.
They will message a bunch of people, try and get them off onto email or text or something else, so that when they are banned by the service, they already have a number of potential victims on the hook.
How do they identify them if they just keep changing their, their persona?
Right. So I'm not entirely familiar with every anti-scam technology that the dating websites use, but there are certainly signals messaging lots of different people more than anyone normally would for an online dating website user. I would anticipate that that's probably one of the signals that they rely on.
All right. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Now I recognize Representative Armstrong, the Vice Chairman of the full committee, for his 5 minutes of question.
Sports team can break your heart. Best movie in the world can leave you shattered when you walk out of it. You could read a novel over the course of a weekend and want to cry your eyes out for 2 days straight. Live music is significantly different. When you go to a concert, I don't care if it's in the biggest venue in the world or First Ave in Minneapolis, people come together. And at a time where we are as bifurcated as possible as a society, it's one of those few places where everybody agrees and gets along. I never saw the Wu-Tang Clan. I saw a Tribe Called Quest open up for the Beastie Boys in 1998 in Minneapolis. And 8 months ago, the Pilgrimage Music Festival in Nashville, Tennessee, tickets came on sale. Happened to be Yom Kippur weekend. My daughter's favorite band is the Lumineers. My son's favorite band is Zach Bryan. We were the first people in line for 2 days straight this weekend so my kids could run up to the front of the stage and sit there from noon until 8 p.m. because they weren't. My daughter's short. She's going to be in the front of the line. But we continue to go down these misguided legislative policies. The BOSS Act has a private right of action which has total damages, $1,000 for each violation, and attorney's fees. And these private rights of action attach to technical violations. There's also this weird preemption where the FTC has jurisdiction, but states have preemption. I use this as an example. I was sitting in DC, bought tickets to Nashville. They were delivered to North Dakota, and I guarantee you somewhere in the disclaimer it says Delaware law controls. I don't think anybody thinks when we're talking about ticket pricing and the outrageous gouging of consumers that they think we should make more money for trial lawyers. I just don't think that's where people think this belongs. And we have the Ticket Act, which is a transparency bill, but it does nothing to cap the price of tickets. It does nothing to reduce the fees. It does nothing to actually reduce any of this. And Live Nation agreed to it in July. So we have broad bipartisan support to codify something that the biggest perpetrator in this industry has already dealt with. And Mr. Touhey, in your testimony, you said the average customer doesn't understand or care about what is on disclosures on a website. And I'll give you a real world example. We are trying to buy tickets for a concert in August in North Dakota. They come on sale, and my wife is on a pre-sale fan-only website, and I'm on another website. And because we have bad internet at our house, she gets kicked off, and I'm watching these prices go up in real time as we're trying to buy tickets. Does anything in any of this legislation do anything for fan-based websites? and actually dealing with the people who are trying, that the artist significantly wants to communicate with?
Thank you for the question. Banning speculative tickets would limit, is the closest thing that you get to.
I hope so. But do we do anything about the URLs and the bots and the legal? I mean, we have legalized scalping at a technological level that used to exist with some guy in a Cubs jersey trying to sell you 2 tickets which you didn't know were real or not in an alley next to Wrigley Field.
Exactly right. No bill, as I said in my testimony, no bill goes far enough because nothing protects the consumer enough. The bad URLs, the deceptive URLs where you don't know if you're on the correct website, you don't know if you're, those need to be addressed.
Well, nobody could, I mean, we're on the website in real time. Tickets went on sale at 2 o'clock. I'm in Congress. My wife's a lawyer for a company in Minneapolis. We dropped everything we're doing. She's on the fan website. I'm on who knows which website trying to buy tickets in real time. But this is the problem. The reseller markup doesn't go to the artist, doesn't go to the songwriter, doesn't go to the venue. It harms the consumer. It's digital scalping, and the people who we allow to manipulate the system are parasites in this ecosystem. They literally feed off the talent of others. They drive up the cost to consumers without providing any benefit to the people who actually create what we all want to see. I've been to a lot of concerts. I've never seen a Yay Ticketmaster t-shirt. I've never seen one. I've seen a lot of Pearl Jam t-shirts. I've seen a lot of Zach Bryan, Tyler Childers. I've seen all of them. But we provide no benefit, and any system that allows to maximize profit to go to the one group in the entire food chain who doesn't create any of it. They don't create any of it. There's no benefit to anybody else anywhere. I mean, we have YouTube and Snapchat and digital. These people are making a name for themselves outside of the system because the system crushes them. And you can have Taylor Swift, and you can have Zach Bryan, you can have these guys who try and fight it, and even they can't do it well. But what about a band like Tiger Lily Gold, who opened, by the way, at Pilgrimage? They're from North Dakota. They don't have the resources. They need live music. And when you get into these systems where they're moving back and forth, we should not celebrate doing something that is actually doing nothing. We should tear this system down and we should rebuild it. Because right now, the people who make the most money create none of the things that people want to see. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman welcome his suggestions on how we can improve the bills. All right, next we have Representative Allen from the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Chair Bilirakis, for convening this legislative hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. You know, back in my day, it was the Temptations and the Supremes. And they'll perform pretty much anywhere, you know, this day and time. But I would like to first commend Congressman Bucshon for his draft legislation to create a national standard for how ingredients are communicated to consumers. This is a common sense bill which would bring labeling standards for cleaning products in line with the food, drug, and cosmetic industries. In my home state of Georgia, the cleaning product industry is responsible for nearly 3,000 jobs with $2.2 billion in economic output, and I'm glad that you have brought this important issue before this committee. I'm also pleased that today we are considering Congressman Dunn's Repair Act. As vehicles develop from analog to digital-based models, I know how challenging it can be for independent repair shops to have the data access needed to repair them. I love that commercial where the car won't crank, and he says, "I'll take care of this." He gets out, and he says, "Boy, these things have really changed." And I grew up on a farm and participated in being a mechanic most of the time. During my time on the House Agriculture Committee, I became familiar with this problem, and I heard from countless farmers in my district. These farmers would sometimes be placed in the impossible situation of having to wait for the next available John Deere dealership repair team, sometimes for days, to fix a tractor before it could be used to plant or harvest. Thankfully, a memorandum of understanding was agreed to by John Deere and the American Farm Bureau this year to address the farmers' concerns. I would like to see an agreement like this also reached by the car manufacturers and repair shops, but I remain open-minded to this bill and look forward to learning more about it today. Mr. Benavidez, is that correct? Good. In your testimony, you discuss your previous agreement with the automakers as providing service information in 2002. Do you believe this agreement worked for mechanical and collision repair shops?
Yes, sir, it worked, and it worked well. And we have actually asked all of our members if they are having problems with access of data, and we don't have it. So yes, sir, it was working.
For the new data access agreement, are there sufficient safeguards for repair shops if issues arise?
Absolutely. With the data access panel that should start up this Friday, we will be able to ask them, talk to them, and fix those problems right on the spot. So it's kind of nice.
Good. Ms. Callahan, could you explain why the data access agreement is not comprehensive enough to allow a shop like yours to be able to continue business as usual?
I will reiterate that I feel like I'm not willing to risk that, given the billions of dollars that are at stake for data, that like Mr. Benavidez said, I just want the repair and maintenance data. I don't want to know how often you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' and which fan you are. I just want to be able to professionally and safely fix cars, and I want to ensure that right for generations to come.
Yeah, and our adversaries can get that information as well. I would like to state for the record that what I don't want to see is any corporation gaining unnecessary access to car data that can be used to bother my constituents with even more intrusive advertisements than they already must deal with. Ms. Callahan, do you need access to be able to upload data to cars in order to make repairs?
I'm unsure of the question.
Okay. Do you need access to be able to upload data to cars?
If I am programming computer modules of a vehicle, yes. If I'm doing basic repair work, I need to be able to access information to see how the system is wired or what system talks to what system to trace diagrams and basically what filter fits a car. So the maintenance and repair data I would need on a regular basis. The programming data is something that we're seeing a bigger increase in. My biggest concern is the difference between plugging it in and the wireless transmission.
And on the ticket issue, I would like to say that the Masters Golf Tournament does a pretty good job of dealing with this speculative issue. I'm going to tell you, if you try to do anything and they have a way of catching you, you lose your ticket. And I think that's the best way to control it, is for the organization to say, we're not going to allow this to happen. And like I said, the Augusta National does a great job with that. Thank you very much, and I'll yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I'll recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, from East Tennessee, and from Johnson City, Tennessee, home of the greatest Gator, University of Florida football Gator of them all, Steve Spurrier.
Oh.
I recognize you for five minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I've told you not to bring that up. Okay, now you're on my list. You're on my list. Well,
I'll give you more time.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. 10 more seconds. I appreciate that, and thank you for being here to the witnesses. The Repair Act is combating a growing problem in the world of auto repairs, and we all know that vehicles have become computerized. More information is shared via telematics between the manufacturer and the vehicle, but not accessible to these independent repair shops. So, Ms. Callahan, if Xpertech had access to telematics, do you have confidence in your technician's ability to properly repair a vehicle the same as a dealer would?
The simple answer, thank you for the question, is yes.
Yes.
I provide a lot of training that I bring to my technicians that are cross-platform. We work on all makes and models instead of just one singular one. So yes, I do believe that my technicians would be just as professional, if not more.
So those technicians have to be certified to work on that particular manufacturer's vehicle?
There is no national certification required for a technician in our industry at all. As a shop owner, I require my technicians to be ASE certified. It's the Institute for Automotive Service Excellence. So that is something that in an independent aftermarket, I do require as an owner.
Very good. So even if you get an outside technician to work on that vehicle, it doesn't void or invalidate a warranty?
Absolutely not.
Very good. And I ask you that because if the only place we had to get our vehicles repaired was a dealer, we'd have an awful long wait time, and I would look at that as vertical integration of the auto industry. And I truly believe that consumers should have the right to their vehicle's data, especially when access to that data is needed to get their vehicle back up and running. And that being said, I think there are fair concerns that have been shared regarding the Repair Act, and I know that because vehicle manufacturers have voiced their concerns with the cybersecurity risk of allowing telematic data to be shared at a distance from the vehicle, because in Massachusetts, when a state-level version of this policy was adopted, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration told manufacturers not to comply with the law initially due to cybersecurity concerns and affiliated safety risk associated with long-distance access to telematics. But NHTSA was ultimately able to solve the cybersecurity concerns when they adopted a plan to share those telematics with repair shops through Bluetooth technology or a similar short-range interaction. So I'd love to work with Dr. Dunn to put a few improvements on the legislation and hopefully get it toward markup so we could solve that issue. I know there are opponents of this bill, but we need to address this issue, and while I don't expect manufacturers to love it, I firmly believe there's a pathway to this bill being more palatable for any company not expressly benefiting from a monopoly on service. And personally, I'd be more inclined, I guess, to purchase a vehicle from a manufacturer who gives me, the consumer, the freedom to take my vehicle where I want to take it to get it serviced. And Ms. Callahan, and I don't like the fact that the vehicle knows how much I weigh. There was no paywall. I did not get reimbursed, and I don't even tell my husband that. So you take that back. Mr. Chairman, with that, we're going to have to fix that. With that, I yield back.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know what? Well, that's all right. I'll ask the question at the end. All right, let's go to Mrs. Clark, and she's recognized for 5 minutes. Go questioning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank Ranking Member Chakowski for holding this hearing today. And just for the record, Mrs. Clark is my mom. And okay. I also want to thank our witnesses as well for being here today and testifying, bringing your expertise to bear. I'm so glad to see this committee considering meaningful legislation to address some of the most pressing challenges for facing consumers today, including my own bill, alongside Congressman Richie Torres and Congressman Peter Garbarino, the Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act. This common-sense bipartisan bill would require that the CSPC establish a mandatory safety standard for lithium-ion batteries in micro-mobility products like electric bicycles and scooters. Fires caused by lithium-ion batteries in e-bikes and other devices have already killed 14 people and injured 93 others in New York City this year. Since 2021, unsafe micromobility devices have been linked to hundreds of fires and over 24 fatalities. My office has received letters of support for this legislation from Consumer Reports, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the International Association of Firefighters, People for Bikes, Grubhub, and DoorDash. And I'd like to ask for unanimous consent that these letters be entered into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
While I know fire departments and emergency response professionals are working to upgrade their technology and training to respond to these new types of fires, setting standards to prevent these incidents is critical. One of the clearest ways we can protect consumers from fires linked to micromobility devices is to require them to meet the mandatory safety standards. So my first question is, a consumer should not need to evaluate complex electrical engineering to determine whether the product they purchase is safe and safe for them to use. Just last week, a new law went into effect in New York City requiring e-bikes to meet certain safety standards, but the dangers presented by unsafe batteries being sold are not unique to my district in Brooklyn. Mr. Gentine, could you speak to the importance of having a federal safety standard for products like micro-mobility devices?
Absolutely, Congresswoman. Thank you for the question and for your leadership on the issue. Yeah, the issues of lithium-ion batteries across the consumer product marketplace have been a high-profile issue for CPSC for some time, and obviously the use in these products brings added complexity. I think creating a standard is certainly important, and getting compliance to that standard is important, but I would also say one of the issues, there are a couple of issues that go beyond that standard. We have a huge problem with counterfeit batteries, whether in these products or others, and that is something that a standard won't address, because obviously those actors are not really concerned about what the law is since they're breaking it already. And then, we're talking about repair here. At least one of the fires involved here, there was a very unlicensed repair shop being operated. And so I think because of the complexity of the issues, my only concern is a 6-month timetable, quite frankly, because these are very big, very complex issues. That said, I understand the desire certainly on your part to signal to CPSC, to signal to the regulated community that this is an issue that needs to move forward and needs to move forward with as much speed as we can safely bring to bear. So I think creating a standard, creating a mandatory standard is absolutely an important piece. And then there's other work that CPSC and others need to continue to do.
Very well. My office has received feedback suggesting that mandatory safety standards should apply not only to internal and external batteries, but chargers and components connecting batteries to the device as well. Mr. Gentine, in your opinion, would it be helpful to expand the scope of the bill to include battery-related equipment?
I haven't given thought to whether in this specific legislation that would be advisable, but certainly that's an entire ecosystem, and again, a lot of complexity involved. So, it might be useful in that situation to rather than adding something to the bill, to add a request to CPSC to deliver a report on what other components they think are critical links in this chain that need to be addressed at a standards level. But I think we wouldn't want to just add something in at a legislative level, but at the same time, yes, the charging systems are a key component of this. Frankly, the wiring in the house is a key component of this. There are fires that have been associated with issues there. So that, again, I think goes to why I think 6 months might be a little ambitious, given just the inordinate level of complexity and the resources constraints that CPSC faces.
Yes, and my colleagues, you may hear oftentimes in flights that they're asking people who have lithium batteries within their carry-ons. These lithium batteries can be quite volatile, so it's important that we step up and move into the 21st century. Finally, let me just add that while I'm dedicated to passing vital legislation to protect consumers, our laws can only be effective if the federal agencies charged with implementing them are funded and operational. So I urge my colleagues to stop holding the federal government hostage in hopes of exacting draconian funding cuts to essential programs and agencies. No one wins in a shutdown. Least of all, the American people. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. Now I'll recognize Ms. Trahan for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Terrific. Thank you, Chairman Bilirakis and Ranking Member Schakowsky, for calling this hearing. I'm glad that the committee is looking at thoughtful options to protect consumers and ensure a competitive market in the ticketing and the auto repair industries. I'm excited that 2 bills that I've led, the Youth Poisoning Protection Act, or YPPA, and the Consumer Safety Technology Act, are also being considered. YPPA will unequivocally start saving lives as soon as it's passed, and I urge the committee to rapidly mark it up. I want to thank my co-leads, Reps Carey, Porter, and Stewart, and all the medical experts, consumer advocates, and most of all, the parents and families whose passion and advocacy has helped this critically important bill move forward today. Also being considered is the Consumer Safety Technology Act, which will position the CPSC and the FTC to leverage and respond to technological advances to better fulfill their missions, including by commissioning a study on the use of artificial intelligence by the CPSC. Mr. Gentine, the CPSC is charged with tracking companies' compliance with recalls to prevent the sale of dangerous products to consumers. How does the CPSC accomplish that today when products are being sold on countless different online marketplaces, and how could artificial intelligence help with that?
Sure, and thank you very much for the question and for your leadership on the issue. And right now, CPSC certainly does use some automated tools. They are mostly just an automated gathering tool, just sweeping vast amounts of data into an agency that doesn't have enough people to process them and could never, based on the volume of information that's out there, the number of places that products are sold. Obviously, manufacturers can sell directly, well-known retailers can sell directly, but then you have sales channels through social media that become almost impossible to monitor. And so automated tools to not only bring in more of that information, but help CPSC staff understand what out of all of this data is the thing I actually need to look at. Sophisticated data analytics tools can do that, can help refine the targeting and make sure that the limited hours there are in the day are best spent identifying these recalled products that are for sale.
Thank you. And to follow up, could you speak a little bit about how a government shutdown would affect CPSC's ability to take dangerous and deadly products off the market, and how bad actors could exploit any lapses in CPSC enforcement?
Sure, and I would say in the CPSC space, the bad actors are the ones I'm actually least concerned about in a shutdown because they're acting badly anyway. My concern in a shutdown is there's twofold. One, on the rulemaking side, things just get backed up, and we've seen that CPSC is just now catching up to where it might have been had the 2019 shutdown not occurred. In the defect space, the recall space, you're talking about, the CPSC may shut down or mostly shut down. Companies' obligations don't shut down, and certainly product incidents don't stop. And so companies are left in a position where they may file a report to CPSC as required under Section 15 of the Act, and then that report isn't open, isn't read. The company doesn't get the benefit of CPSC staff's expertise and engagement in evaluating whether or not something actually does need action. And then in situations where companies have already identified that they see something that concerns them in the marketplace, they want to take action and recall a product, they don't have the benefit of CPSC there to help spread the word, spread the message about that recall. And we saw that in the last shutdown, there were recalls that had to be re-announced months later because they had been announced while CPSC was dark. And I think in that situation, not only, again, the bad actors are going to act badly, but the good actors and the consumers are harmed because CPSC isn't there to play its role.
Thank you. I'm glad that the committee is also tackling the critical issue of right to repair. I mean, during the pandemic, the cost of automotive repair rose faster than even the cost of health care. And the people in Massachusetts responded. In 2020, they voted in the first statewide automotive right to repair law with 75% in favor. Modern vehicles can be diagnosed and repaired remotely, but that innovation should decrease the cost of repair and should not be used as a way to limit the choices for consumers or cut independent repair shops out of the market. Ms. Callahan and Mr. Benavidez, what data do you and other independent repair shop owners need to do your jobs? And how do we ensure that you can access that data securely while respecting consumers' privacy?
Basically what we need, thank you very much for the question, Congresswoman, we need repair and maintenance data. All of the rest of the information that your vehicle is collecting, we don't need access to. I simply, and Mr. Benavidez and I do not differ in almost anything except for making this codified. We want to be able to safely and professionally repair people's vehicles outside of the dealership. And frankly, we would like the dealerships to be able to repair other makes and models as well as freely as we do.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thanks so much.
I'll give Mr. Benavidez the opportunity to respond as well.
I agree exactly with what she said. Right now, we have that information. We have access to the information. We have all the access we need to that information, and that's really what the MOU kind of helped us with.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and now I'm going to give Mr. Balson, who's waiting on, he's on the full committee, and I'll recognize him for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the ability to waive on this committee, and thank you all for being here. I want to direct my question to you, Mr. Benavidez, the two I have, and just first question I have is critics of H.R. 906 claim that the bill undermines intellectual property rights and the integrity of the auto supply chain by compelling automakers to provide any aftermarket parts manufacturer the information necessary to produce or offer compatible aftermarket parts. What is your response to those that say this bill primarily benefiting importers of aftermarket parts, not necessarily vehicle owners?
As far as aftermarket parts, I know that the SMART Act is different than the Repair Act, and as far as parts are concerned, the aftermarket in my industry is different than the aftermarket in her industry. In my industry, we do not like aftermarket parts. We don't like the way they're built. We don't like the safety concerns they promote. But in her industry, they're a little bit different, and that's what's different with ASA is we represent both sides, and that's probably the biggest split we have in our association is aftermarket parts on both sides.
Okay, thank you for your response. I appreciate that. So I'm here today just because I want to do a little background here. And, you know, the 24-page bill, basically, we're forgetting about the dealer again. And even during this strike that we're dealing with right now, in 2007, 2008, I lost a lot of good friends, good dealer friends that were eliminated back in the auto industry back in the day. So my family was in the new car dealership. We were for 48 years. And I ran the shop. I was a mechanic, worked on the cars myself, did everything. And it's tough. It's tough working on these cars anymore. And the technology, since I've been out of it for 25 years, is even more challenging. But I communicate with a lot of my friends still. So I just want you to understand where we're coming from as a dealership, as small business owners. We're small business owners. We pay franchise fees. We pay tech. I mean, we have a monthly fee based upon the volume of cars, new cars that you sell, that we pay to the manufacturers. And I think that gets forgotten. A lot of people don't know that. I understand the concerns from the independent repair shops. I mean, I can give you scenarios, since I have 5 minutes, where running the shop, if my neighbor down the street, and I get my car serviced today at an independent shop more so than I do the dealership, but in the day, if my friend down the street, independent shop, needed a tech manual, needed a special tool, I gave it to him. And why is that? Because it was a relationship building. We did that. We were in a small community. I don't want the big, bad actors to set a precedence for everybody else. And that's kind of what we do when we make laws and do government. We eliminate the people that are good actors about it and do share the information, you know, as needed on that basis. But we need to just, you know, I just want to make sure everyone understands the importance of automobile dealerships in the communities. And in several meetings that I've had, I've brought that up. You know, we are important to the communities. How do we ensure that the dealer-owned shops, who are also facing pressures from the manufacturers for different reasons, completely different reasons sometimes, remain competitive and are not undercut on prices that are out of their control? For you, sir. I'm sorry. Benavidez.
we don't see that going on in my neck of the woods, right, where we're trying to undercut a dealership or any of that nature. Everybody's trying to get the car repaired at a fair price. That's all we want, is we want the car repaired accurately, safely, and at a fair price. And everybody's trying to do that. I don't see their competition with the dealers and us. I think everybody wants the car fixed for the consumer correctly. It's in the best interest of the manufacturers to have that vehicle repaired correctly. We don't see that in our area.
Okay. 70% of the aftermarket facilities now do most of the maintenance on automobiles. I don't know if you're aware of that. Ms. Callahan, did you have a response to that or anything? Do you want to add anything? Or?
Thank you for the opportunity. My response is the same. We have a very robust coexistence with the dealers that we have locally, and I would love to see that continue. My big concern is the ones that don't have local dealer representation. How are they going to best serve their markets?
I'm going to give you a famous quote from my father, and I lost him 2 years ago. And I know Chairman only had 15 seconds, but it's a great quote. As I told you, I ran the shop and worked on the cars. Gentleman walked into the dealership with a Fram oil filter. Fram's not really around anymore, but back in the day they were great. I mean, they were fine product. He comes into the dealership. My father, if you didn't get past his office without him seeing you, you were good. But if he saw you, you were in trouble. And the gentleman walked by with the Fram oil filter. My dad got up and said, hey, what do you got in your hand there? I said, it's an oil filter. Troy's going to change the oil in my car. And he said, our oil filters in the back aren't good enough for you? And he said, well, no, no, Bill, it's not that. I like Fram oil filters, and Troy said he would do it. He said, well, let me put this into you. Across the street from our dealership was McDonald's. My dad said, does McDonald's let you bring your own hamburger in to fry it? So, in remembrance of my father. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Olson, and I want to I'm glad you recognize the dealers, because they're under a lot of pressure these days, and there are a lot of requirements and mandates. I went to a dealership just the other day. They told me this have to spend $750,000 getting chargers for their electric vehicles, and they're not doing very well in sales. So I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to yield myself a couple minutes. 5 minutes. I won't take the 5 minutes, and then I want to yield to the ranking member as well, because she has a couple questions too. My first question is for Mr. Benavidez. You mentioned that the automakers, that some automakers are not part of this agreement that we've been discussing. Can you elaborate on that? Clarify that point, please, for us.
So it is 90% of the sales of the vehicles. It is all major U.S. vehicles, Toyota, Honda, and European. And now, again, Rivian and Tesla just came on board. So there's some good manufacturers in there that we're glad to see.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question for Mr. Touhey with regard to the ticketing. You know, I'm concerned about people my age and older who don't use the handheld devices or the computers, what have you. First of all, access to a traditional box office to purchase a ticket. How difficult is it, and how many people still do that as opposed to purchasing through a Ticketmaster online or what have you? Using other brokers. Can you elaborate on that? I appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. The box office still exists, and
Yeah.
it's still, every venue still has a box office and box office staff there. The vast majority of people now move to purchase their tickets online than show up at the box office to do that. But they are still staffed, they are still there, and they do still service the customers, especially on the day of show. They may not be open as much as they used to, where they were the central point. Now they're more of a service and a troubleshooting.
But there's access online or through the telephone if somebody wanted to purchase. Is that correct? Through the box office.
There's some access through phone. The box office itself does not. In some venues they do. Smaller venues still have some phone rooms open, but the majority have closed phone rooms with internet access.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to yield back, and I'm going to yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Illinois.
So, Mr. Breyault, I wanted to talk a little bit more about speculative, or whatever they really are, tickets. And first of all, why is there a reason that most people, the people who rely on it, do rely on it? Why are people going to these speculative rather than just getting a ticket?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I can't speak for everyone who buys speculative tickets about why they would choose to go that way. What I can tell you is that far too many consumers are deceived when they are buying speculative tickets. That's because speculative tickets may be intermingled with tickets that are not speculative, and sometimes they are offered before tickets are actually made available at all. That's why I recommended that Congress look into doing something about exactly what these things are called. The discussion draft, for example, would ban speculative ticketing but allow a ticket buying service to be offered. Think of it as a DoorDash for tickets, for example. We think that that makes a lot of sense. If a consumer wishes to have someone else go through the trouble of clicking through multiple screens and signing up for an account on Ticketmaster to acquire a ticket, and they want to pay them to do it, I think that's something that consumers can do. What we don't want is a confusing and deceptive experience where consumers don't know what they're getting into and where what they think they're buying is actually a ticket that's definitely 100% going to get them into the door. If a consumer wants to buy this option or have someone else shop for them, we think that they should be able to have the ability to do so. But I agree with the premise of your question, I think, which is that as it currently happens, speculative ticketing has a very high potential for deception of consumers.
So for the reason of leaving that option, is that why you're reluctant to say, as Mr. said, to ban the idea of speculative ticketing?
Well, Congressman, I think we do support the discussion draft that would outright ban speculative ticketing. We think that is one option to go after this problem, particularly in the cases of speculative tickets that are sold prior to a public on sale. The practice is just indefensible.
Okay. What is his name? Not Touhey. Touhey, Mr. Touhey. I can't see your full name written out there. I wondered if you wanted to comment on that.
Certainly. I mean, these speculative tickets, to be clear, it is deception because the consumer there's no way to differentiate if you are on a site to know that it's a speculative ticket or not. As I mentioned in my testimony, I knew from being in the industry that if I don't see specific seats in a sale process, then it's likely speculative tickets. Because in a legitimate sale, you buy the specific seat. But if it's just listed as a section in a row, it's generally a speculative ticket. But there is no hard ticket way to differentiate. And a lot of the times, it is an email confirmation and then a follow-up later that you may get a different ticket for a different row or a different section, or you may get no ticket at all.
Okay. Well, we want to work to get language that will really protect the consumers in the best way. So thank you very much.
Okay, very, very well. I don't think there's anyone else here on the panel, so I appreciate it very much. I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record the documents included on the staff hearing documents list without objection. So ordered.
Objection.
I remind members that they have 10 business days to submit questions for the record, and I ask the witnesses to respond to the questions promptly. Members should submit their questions, and I know there will be, by the close of business on October 12th. And I tell you what, this has been a very informative hearing, and I really thank all of you for staying and answering these questions. So I think it has been very productive. I believe the ranking member would agree with me. Thank you very much. Again, without objection, the subcommittee is adjourned.